Okay, meeting is now being recorded.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to call this special meeting of the Historic Resource Commission's May 13, 2021 to order. I made my own gavel. Okay. Commissioner Marashi, would you lead us in the pledge, and can everybody see the flag?
Place your hand over your
Oh
right.
yeah, I can see it. That's nice.
Please stand and place your right hand over your heart and say after me, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the
republic for which it stands,
one nation,
nation
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Hey, Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Yes, roll call. Commissioner Carpenter,
Yes.
Commissioner Hardy,
Here.
Commissioner Marashi,
Here.
Commissioner Shipp, Commissioner Pena Sarmiento,
Here.
Commissioner Frazier, Commissioner McLaughlin,
Here.
Vice Chair Rush, and Chair Christie.
Here.
And for the record, Vice Chair Rush will be joining the meeting in just a couple of minutes. Chair, you do have quorum.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I now invite the Commission Secretary to describe the way the public can access this virtual meeting. I do hope that July will have an in-person meeting. Yay, everybody, right? Let's hope July, okay. All right. Okay, Sarah, would you go ahead, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair Christie. This meeting is being live streamed via our portal at www.santa-anna.primegov.com/public/portal and to our YouTube at youtube.com/City of Santa Ana videos/live. If you would like to provide a public comment, you may do so in the following ways. Join the meeting via Zoom. Enter meeting ID 99470067981. When the item that you would like to comment on is being discussed, select the hand icon to let us know you would like to speak. You will be called upon by the name you entered. Or you may call 669-900-9128, enter meeting ID 99470067981. When the item that you would like to comment on is being discussed, press the *9 to let us know you would like to speak. You will be called upon by the last 3 digits of your phone number. After you are called upon, you must press *6 to unmute yourself. You will have 3 minutes to speak, and I will alert you when your time is up. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Moving on to public comments. This is comments on non-agenda items. Madam Secretary, does anyone wish to speak?
If you would like to comment on a non-agenda item, please either select the hand icon if you are participating via Zoom, or if you're calling in, please press *9 now. We'll wait a few seconds to see if we have anyone. Chair, we do not have any speakers for non-agenda item.
Thank you so much, Madam Secretary. All right, moving on to the consent items. What we'll do is just do item A, the minutes, and then we'll circle back before we close the meeting, go back for the excused absence in case any of the other three commissioners will come in on the call. All right. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the March? I lost it. Somebody help me out. March 25th,
March 25th.
2021 meeting.
So moved.
Did somebody move?
So moved. Commissioner
Okay,
Marashi.
moved by Commissioner Marashi. Is there a second?
I can second. This is Commissioner Hardy.
Hardy, I see you. Okay. Moved by Commissioner Marashi, second by Commissioner Hardy. Secretary, please call the roll. All those in favor?
Aye.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Approve.
Commissioner Hardy.
Aye.
Commissioner Marashi.
Aye.
Commissioner Shipp. Commissioner Peña Sarmiento.
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier. Not here. Commissioner McLaughlin.
Aye.
Vice Chair Rush.
Aye.
And Chair Christie.
Aye.
Motion passes with Commissioner Shipp and Frazier absent.
Thank you so much. Okay. Okay, moving on to that, we will now have the public hearing. Okay, and please note, formal action by the Historic Resource Commission shall become effective after 10 days appeal period unless the City Council holds a public hearing on the matter. Then the formal action will become effective on the day following the hearing and decision by the City Council. An appeal from the decision or requirements of the Commission must be filed with the clerk of the council and a copy sent to the Planning Department within 10 days of the date of the Commission's actions. The appeal may be made by any interested parties, individual, or group. Okay? Now, the public hearing protocols. I will now review the process for the public hearing so that everyone knows what to expect. Staff will provide a presentation and answer questions from the Commission. The public hearing will be open. The applicant will be given an opportunity to speak, limited to 15 minutes. Members of the public will be given the opportunity to comment, limited to 3 minutes. The applicant may be given the opportunity to respond to the comments made by the public, limit to 5 minutes. The public hearing will be closed. Discussion will return to the Commission with formal actions taken to approve, deny, or continue review of the application. Please consider the following suggestions when organizing your comments. Please state your name and address, which is strictly voluntary. State whether you support, oppose, or neutral to the proposal. Your statement should include all pertinent facts within your knowledge. With that being said, this is the time and place to consider item number 1, Historic Resource Commission application number 2020-08, Historic Register categorization number 2020-07, and Historic Property Preservation Agreement number 2020-10 for the property located at 2119 North Freeman Street. Please note, decision on this matter is final unless appealed within 10 calendar days. Before we begin, do we have any commissioners having anything they wish to disclose with regards to this item? If not, hearing none, staff will now provide a brief presentation.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Before we begin with the first item, I wanted to take a second to remind the Commission about the contributive category, which will be the only category that will be seen on tonight's agenda. As seen on the screen, in order for a property to be categorized as contributive, it must contribute to the overall character and history of a specific neighborhood or district and be a good example of period architecture. I also wanted to take a second and address Chairperson Christie's request. While I'll try to the best of my ability to accommodate the request to point to specific elements and character defining features, the keyboard that I currently have present makes it kind of difficult. And then in addition, the photos that are provided may be too small to identify specific features. However, I did want to let the Commission know that staff is working on identifying a future date for the Commission training to specifically identify certain features with different specific architectural styles. So that concern that Chairperson Christie has would be addressed for future meetings.
I know
So
you do your best. I know you will do your best. We have faith in you, okay?
Thank you, Chairperson. The first item on tonight's agenda is a request to place the property address as 2119 North Freeman Street on the Santa Ana Register of Historical Properties, and to execute a Mills Act agreement with the property owner. The Eisenhofheim house is a ranch-style house constructed in 1957. The house qualifies for listing under Criterion 1 for embodiment of the distinguishing characteristics of the ranch-style house, in particular, the picturesque dovecote variant of the ranch style. Dovecote refers to this birdhouse-like feature at the gable ends of the home. The recommended categorization is contributive because it contributes to the overall character and history of West Floral Park, and because it's a good example of ranch-style architecture. Character-defining exterior features that should be preserved include, but may not be limited to, the materials and finishes, such as the stucco and horizontal wood siding, as seen on this elevation, the board and batten siding that's seen on this elevation, the moderately pitched front and side gabled roof, the wide open eaves with exposed rafters that are not seen on this image, the decorative pointed eave extensions and dovecote as previously mentioned, and the fenestration or windows, which show and highlight a diamond and multi-pane hung windows, which can be seen on this front elevation here, this diamond pattern. Staff recommends that the Commission adopt a resolution to approve HRCA 2020-08, HRC 2020-07, and recommend that City Council authorize HPPA 2020-10. That concludes staff's presentation. I'd be happy to answer questions at this time.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, does any commission have any questions of staff at this present time?
I do.
Would you please, I'm sorry, is there a way that I can see who is talking to me? Tim,
Me.
okay, because Vice Chair Rush, okay, thank you.
Allie, just for you, I did go out and look at all of these, and I don't have a problem with this one being listed. I am concerned about what appears to be a camera that is out of the Dovecote detail on the street elevation of the house. I recognize in this day and age that many people want to have cameras and so forth. And maybe this was their attempt to be perhaps obscure, but because the Dovecote is one of the character defining features of the house, it almost seems more appropriate that that should be moved maybe to a corner or something where it's a small camera. And of course, today these cameras are getting smaller by the week. But to me, it stuck out like a sore thumb and a cat patch when I saw that. And to me, it was just, it takes away greatly from the right there in that element of the house, that architectural detail. So if I was to vote for approval, my approval would be conditioned upon that being moved to a less noticeable and more obscure place on the front of the house, maybe the front corner or something. I don't know if any other commissioners saw it, but that concludes my comment.
Do we have any other comments from the commissioners?
The only comment I have is I see what Vice Chair Rush is saying. If you actually go to the agenda and you zoom in on the picture, you can clearly see it. That's it.
I'm sorry. I really don't see where the camera is. I'm sorry.
Let me attempt to, it's
Ally,
very
do you-
small, but it's right in the middle of this Dovecote.
Yep.
Oh. Right where that pointer is pointing to.
So it's right in the center of the Dovecote, right?
Correct.
Okay.
It's just peeking out of the Dovecote. Out of one of the what's meant to be a access portal into the, architectural detail that's meant to mimic a large birdhouse.
Okay. Okay, maybe during, are the Andy or Alice Hung on the line when their chance to speak, the owners of the property? Maybe they can address this at that time. Okay?
Good afternoon. My name is Andy Huang. Good afternoon, Commissioners, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, city officials and representatives, and the entire historic board. I guess I forgot anybody. I appreciate Commissioner Rush's comment. We did see.
Oh, Mr. Hung, hold on 1 second. Okay, we haven't come to the public hearing
Oh, I'm
yet.
so sorry. I thought you were asking me to speak. I
Okay, so,
apologize.
yeah, we
I'll
will
wait.
call on you. You
Thank
can
you.
discuss it at that time, okay?
Thank you. I apologize.
No problem. Right now, we have the commissioners asking staff questions regards to their presentation. Any other commissioners?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Carpenter. I would agree with Vice Chair's comment on the camera in the Dove Cove. It is a little obtrusive, to be quite frank about it. And if they could relocate or even possibly a smaller camera, I think that would really preserve the building's architecture. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff for the commissioners? Okay, then we'll move on. Madam Secretary, have we received any written communications?
We have not received any written communication on this item.
Okay, and with that, I now declare the public hearing is now open. Did everybody hear that? I have to make, okay. Now, at this time, would the applicant like to speak on the matter? Mr. Hung? It's your
Yes,
turn.
once again, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I apologize. I thought you were calling on me. The audio was a little off.
That's okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Rush, for his comment. We did see him park in front of our house. That is by virtue of the way of a security camera. We did notice him, and I recognize him now. I was more concerned of who this gentleman was in front of my house. I figured it had to be a member of the historic board. I said, it's probably, he looked nice enough, so he wasn't too alarmed. The reason why we utilized that hole is we didn't want to damage the facade of the house. It's a very old house. I didn't want to cut another hole or do anything else. I have no problem moving that camera up, but my concern is that we want to do it in one, tasteful manner. Number two, in a way that does not destroy or demolish any of the siding on the house, which would be, really bad for us. And we use that existing hole for that reason. Cameras cannot come any smaller. This is the smallest camera. It's a $400 camera, just one camera. So it's a very expensive camera. It's a very good camera. And we can move it elsewhere. But my concern would be if I moved it anywhere, I would have to cut a hole into the house, the siding. So that hole was there. If you look at it, there were actually 3 dovecote holes. I only used one of the hole. And the board members and the commissioners had a problem seeing the cameras because it's so nondescript. It's the same color as the paint. You don't really see it. Is my retort to having it moved. I'd have no problem, but I would request that you take a look at it one more time and consider the fact that if I move it somewhere, I would have to cut a hole in the house itself. Now, the gable is beautiful. We appreciate it. That's why we didn't want to cut any holes around. And that camera in that location is the highest point, in the front gable that would not damage the house, would give us the most secure image of our front yard and the street and our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, does the commission have any questions to the applicant now?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Carpenter. I understand your concern with cutting holes, but could the camera be raised to the very peak of that gable, which would require only a small hole for the cable? I assume it's a wired camera, not a wireless. I think that would be solve the problem for everyone.
May I answer?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Hung.
So this is Andy Huang again. Thank you, Commissioner Carpenter, for that. I'm not certain that would resolve it because if you look at it, there's going to be the, I think it's called the Shipla or the front facade Shipla wood. We would have to drill past that under the roof and then draw the wire, they're pretty big cables, into the hole is going to be there regardless, right? We're going to have to drill a hole one way or the other because power is being accessed inside the house out through that hole. Well, I mean, I did it really, as careful as possible not to damage anything. I made a hole that was as tight as can be to get that wire for the camera through. If I move the camera up, positioning is not a problem, but then I would have to drill into the front Shipla facade. I would welcome you to come out and look at it and suggestions on that part, but I did the best I could. I don't mind moving it, but again, I don't want to damage the house in any way.
I fully appreciate that, and I'm glad to see her have that concern. But honestly, the hole for the cable can't be any larger than a ½ inch, correct?
No, actually the cable is about 1 inch. It's a very thick, robust cable. This is an HD camera, and it can zoom in very, very well.
I see. Yeah, that's just my suggestion, that it be moved higher up onto the gable. Again, that's a rather, if you did have to drill a 1 inch hole, that's still not very big.
Yeah, but then again, we have concerns for termites, right? We did a hole there. That's why we used an existing hole for that reason, because I didn't want to drill into the wood Shipla and also have any infestation or termites, things like that, and, or bugs.
Yeah, but you would seal the camera to the house. I mean, the mounting bracket would be sealed to the house, correct?
Well, the camera would be sealed, but in order to seal it, you'd have to drill a hole bigger than the wire in order to seal it, because you have to put in a bracket for the cable and to mount the camera. The camera itself weighs about 3 pounds. So you have to bracket the camera, and to seal the wiring, you would need some sort of a rubbery type of washer to fit around the hole, and then you would silicone around it. And that is something I did consider, but I said, well, I don't want to just use the existing dovecot hole here, so I don't have any damage to the house. I mean, I'd have no qualms doing it, but it's, if I can remind you, most people don't even see that camera walking past my house.
I understand.
Commissioner Carpenter, do you have any more questions to the applicant?
No, that's just my only suggestion. If it could be moved higher. Again, a 1-inch hole through the siding is pretty unobtrusive, especially if it's up under the peak of the gable. And you mount the camera there. It's doable, I think, but that's just my opinion. Thank you.
If I may respond real quick, Madam.
Okay.
Is that for me to move it up there, I would still have to drag the wiring down in that area, and I would have to drill a 4th hole above where the camera is now to get the wiring inside. Because if I drill a hole way on top, that's the roof line. I wouldn't be able to get the wiring. I mean, that's the roof line. So I would still have to drag the wiring down. Now you would see an exposed wire on the cable.
Perhaps I'm not making myself clear, and I apologize for that. I'm talking about penetrating the front gable at the highest pitch of the roof, or the front fascia at the highest pitch of the roof. You're not having to penetrate your fascias or anything else. You're still keeping it under your overhang, under your eaves, and penetrating there. So perhaps I wasn't clear.
No, I understood that, but the wiring itself is where my concern is. The wire has to go in there somewhere through the attic.
But you're bringing it into the attic, correct?
Yes. So the wire would be exposed. You would see the wire.
No. My point is, you would drill the hole higher. You bring the wire into the attic, into the back of the light.
Yeah, but the fascia doesn't cover enough of the dovecot area of the gable where you wouldn't see the wire. I'd be happy to look at it, but the thing is, I don't want to test it out and be wrong, and then have to repair it. I mean, I would certainly look at it again. I'll take all of your suggestions under advisement, and I'll take a look at it again, and we can resolve it. We'll resolve it. But I also want to remind you that there are other characteristics, physical characteristics, beautiful architectural details of this house, that this is not the only one. The windows have been preserved. We preserved the house. We repainted it. We took really great care of it. So, I mean, does it have to be, 1,000 batting average on this one, or is it something that we won't overlook, knowing that we did it on purpose to preserve the integrity of the house, not to damage it?
The one thing, could everybody mute their microphone? We are getting other sounds that's interfering with the speaker. Okay, you all just put your, except for the applicant right now, just mute your phone, your mics. Thank you. Okay, Vice Chair Rush, you can unmute, please.
Okay, my goal here is to take your eye away from this item, this camera, which is your eye is naturally, I think most people would agree, your eye, you look at a house like this, you start at the top, at the peak. So at the peak, you've got that dovecot, and of course at the one of the openings in the center there is this opening to the faux birdhouse, and of course peeking out of that is this camera. And the applicant, he's done his best to buy, I'm sure you went to great expense to buy the smallest camera you could get and so forth, and I applaud that effort. But my goal is to take the eye away from that offensive item. My suggestion would be, why not move it over to, as we're looking at the house, and I don't know what direction the house is on Freeman, so that's an odd numbered address, so it's got to be on the east side of the street. So that means it faces due east.
Faces west, Commissioner.
I'm sorry, faces due west. So if we're looking at the house, my suggestion would be to mount a bracket on the soffit over at the what would be the south corner of the front of the house, and you would have the same vantage point, but your eye wouldn't be drawn to it. And you get away from all of this foolishness about having something at the peak, in the dovecote, all of it. You just take it out of that vicinity altogether. And mount a bracket on the soffit underneath the eave, and not a big deal.
May I respond?
A pretty easy fix, and your eye offended by this item sticking out from the dove, which is one of the primary architectural features of the west elevation, the street elevation of this house. I hate to make a mountain out of a molehill, but there you have it.
Before I go to Commissioner Hardy, Ollie, could you please mute yourself? Ollie, thank you. Okay, Commissioner Hardy.
Yes, I have a comment and a suggestion. First, the comment is that a lot of times that last board and the very top of the gable can be very small, and you probably wouldn't want to be drilling any holes into it if that's the case. The suggestion is, can the camera be painted the same color as the house paint or the area where it's installed? Would that help in disguising the camera? So that's what I have to say.
Okay. Mr. Is it pronounced Hung or Hung?
That's correct. That's correct, Mr. Andy Huang. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Hardy. I did pick out a color so it would blend in with the house paint, and you're correct. It's very thin there. That's why I was very careful not to damage it. And you know, when we look at this property, and anyone who comes here, the first thing they are drawn to are the windows, not the gable. The gable is a beautiful feature of the house, but the beautiful windows that we, kept preserved and taken care of. Even our house cleaner, she has to be extra careful when she's wiping the windows, so she's not to break any of the windows. I even test the windows, open them up once in a while to make sure they're still working. But that is, to me, the focal point of the house. The camera is the same color as the house. We picked that color for many reasons, and I picked that camera coloring on the outside. You had some choices for that reason as well. So it is blending as well. If we move it to the right, to the south side of it, we would have to drag wiring to connect it. And that in itself would be the eyesore, in my opinion, not the camera itself. They would see the camera with the wiring, and also it also creates a dangerous haphazard situation where somebody wants to break in, just cut that wire and the camera's dead. If we move to the south side, we would not be able to see the entire driveway, which would be, if you're looking at the photo to the right, we have a long driveway with the break-ins that's been happening throughout. We want to see someone go down our driveway. They want to hop our fence. We park our car in the driveway. There are windows on the side as well too. So that's the reason why I chose that camera with a 270-degree viewpoint. So it can see to the left lawn, to the right lawn, and catch the driveway. The camera does blend in. I appreciate Commissioner Rush's concern on that part, but I think that most of the commissioners and other board members did not even see the camera until Commissioner Rush pointed it out. And he was parked under my tree, so maybe that's why he was looking from the car vantage point as opposed to stepping out and looking at the house in totality of how beautiful it is. I know it sits at a sore thumb for him, and we're on it. And this is becoming the distraction for the entire house, where there are other beautiful qualities that allowed us or had us convinced us to buy the property, right? After looking at it, but this is the property, and also having the opportunity to apply for the Mills Act and historic registration was what sealed the deal on this house. We looked at, just so that I want to share with you how careful of a person I am. My wife and I looked at almost 90 homes in a period of 6 months. You can ask any of the realtors in the area and they know us by name because we were so careful and cautious in everything we do. This camera is also an example of us not trying to damage the property and putting it in a place that is, one, safe for us to view everything, but also doesn't damage the house and doesn't create any new holes or run any wires outside that would be unsightly. So there are no wires here on this camera because we tuck them away as neatly as we can. Thank you.
Commissioner Alberta Christie.
All right,
Comment?
Commissioner Marashi, go ahead.
So, when I look at the house, I look at the integrity of all the defining characteristics there. And without a doubt it is. And does this, to me, belong in the historic registry? Absolutely. The only thing I would maybe ask is, it looks like, I think what maybe caught Vice Chair Rush's eye was that it's protruding. I'm just wondering if it can be inserted back into the hole a little further, because a lot of times when you look at these kind of openings, you'll see the openings and then you have the thickness of the wood and then you have the screening behind there. It's almost like a birdhouse effect. And I'm just wondering if that could be pushed back. That's all my comments. Thank you.
Mr. Ho?
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Marashi. Just to point out again, there are actually 3 holes there. The middle hole is being taken away by the camera. The camera can't be pushed back, but the other 2 holes, at that time, we weren't aware that it was a dovecote. So I'd cover that hole because I didn't want rainwater to get in there. I didn't want it to be damaged or have any rot. But those are coming off once we discovered what they were and how special they were. That's how much we wanted to preserve it and take care of the gable, because it was a hole that was there and it was beautiful. And we were worried about, we had crazy rain when we moved in that month in April last year. So we wanted to, not have any rainwater. So we were doing that to preserve the rainwater. But the camera can't be pushed back. But you'll still see 2 of the holes to the left and the right of the camera. And that's probably the best we can do without making a bigger hole to push the camera back.
Okay. Any other commissioners' comments or wish to speak? I don't see any more raised hands on this. My feeling is, once again, is that this is a beautiful house. It's historic. And as we all know, we're not safe. And looking at this, the house is well kept. The features that we have from the windows to the original style of the house. I mean, we have to look at it this way. We're in, and crime is everywhere, okay? If you look out what is going on, crime is coming in. And we're always talking about how do we secure these homes? How do we, how do the homeowners keep people, protected in their own homes and on their neighborhoods? And we have to more or less look at it as, okay, we have to go through surveillance. How many of the neighborhood associations have neighbor to neighbor on this? And looking at this home and what the homes have done to keep it, the camera is now a part of our life. How many of us have cameras on our homes? This is way of life. And we just have to look at it. Is this little camera going to stop this application going through because of the fact that, we have the homeowner is there to protect its property and have to take certain steps in order to preserve it. And I'm looking at all the rest. Does it meet the qualification? Yeah, it does. So with that, I'm in favor of moving forward with this application. So those are my comments. Anyone else? Okay. I think we've already gone. The commission have any comments on? We will now take phone comments from the public. Madam Secretary, do we have any members of the public that would like to comment? Madam Secretary? Hello?
Have me on mute. Sorry about that. I was on mute. I will start again. If there is anyone who would like to comment on this item, please press *9 if you're calling in by phone or select the hand icon. I will wait a few seconds to see if we have any callers. Chair, we do not have any speakers on this item.
Okay, very good. Okay, then I will now close the public hearing. One more time, does the commission have any final questions of staff? Then moving forward, the recommended action before us, and I will entertain a motion. Remember, guys, we talked about this. Number 1, to adopt the resolution approving Historic Resource Commission application number 2020-08 and Historic Register categorization number 2020-07. 2, recommend that the City Council authorize the City Manager and Clerk of the Council to execute the attached MILSAC agreement with Andy and Alice Hong, subject to non-substantive changes approved by the City Manager and City Attorney. Do I have a maker of the motion?
So moved, Commissioner Marashi.
Okay, is there a second?
I second motion, Commissioner
Okay.
Hardy.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Marashi, second by Commissioner Hardy. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter,
Approve.
Commissioner Hardy,
You're on mute.
you're on mute. You're on mute.
Sorry, yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Marashi,
Yes.
Commissioner Schiff,
Approved.
Commissioner Peña Sarmiento,
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier, Commissioner McLaughlin,
Aye.
Vice Chair Rush,
Yes.
and Chair Christie.
Yes.
Motion passes by majority vote with Commissioner Frazier absent.
Thank you, everybody. Hey, congratulations. Let's give it, unmute
Thank you all.
yourself. Congratulations.
Yay.
Yay. Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Hong.
Thank you so much, Madam Chairwoman. We appreciate it very much. Thank you, everybody.
You're welcome.
Have a wonderful evening. I think we can tell off now. I think our agenda is done, right? Our business is done.
You can go out and celebrate.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay. Okay, here we go. This is now the time and the place to consider item number 2, Historic Resource Commission application number 2021-05, Historic Resource Categorization number 2021-05, and Historic Property Preservation Agreement number 2021-05 for the property located at 415 West 19th Street. Please note, decision on this matter is final unless appealed within 10 calendar days. Before we begin, do any commissioners have anything they wish to disclose with regards to this item? Okay, very good. Okay, now the staff will now do a brief presentation. Staff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The second item on tonight's agenda is a request to place the property address as 415 West 19th Street on the Santa Ana Register of Historical Properties and to execute a Mills Act agreement with the property owner. The W.M. Corey House is a Tudor revival house constructed in 1929. The house qualifies for listing in the register under Criterion 1 as an intact example of a simple Tudor revival bungalow in the city of Santa Ana. Constructed by Floral Park builders and developers, the Hohner brothers, the house has remained under its original ownership for nearly 3 decades. The recommended categorization is contributive because it contributes to the overall character and history of Floral Park, and it's a good example of period architecture representing the Tudor revival style in Santa Ana. Character-defining features of the home that should be preserved include the steep gabled roof, the half timbering, which can be seen here. Oh, give me 1 second. The fenestration and then the unique stucco application. Staff recommends that the Commission adopt a resolution to approve HRCA 2021-05, HRC 2021-05, and recommend that the City Council authorize HPPA 2021-05. That concludes staff's presentation. I'd be happy to answer questions at this time.
Thank you so much. Please note, decision on this matter. Oh, I lost my place. Sorry about that. Okay, does the commission have any questions of staff? Do you please, if you do, I'm sorry, I'm thumbing through. Like, okay. Vice Chair Rush.
I'm assuming it's Pedro who's making these comments.
That's correct.
Okay. I didn't know because Allie's box is lit up, but it's your voice clearly, so I was confused. Event. You made a comment that the house was built in 1929 and it's still under its original ownership for 3 decades. Something there doesn't add up. The house is 91 years old, 92 years old.
Sorry, Commissioner Rush, that was an oversight. I think that was a comment as part of the occupancy history that it was with its original ownership for 30 years. It's obviously no longer under that same ownership. So that was an oversight.
I have no other questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff from the commission? From the presentation?
This is Commissioner Marashi. I just had a question about the roof line, the ridge, the roof ridge. It seems like it's different. Something has happened to part of it. You see what I'm talking about in the picture?
Commissioner, I'm not really sure where you're referring to. I'm going to try to move the pointer without moving the slide, so bear with me. Are you referring to maybe this part?
Nope,
higher
keep
pitch
going,
roof?
keep going, keep going. Right there, starting there and going towards the right, and then all of a sudden it abruptly stops about 4 or 5 feet from the end. I was just, looked like a poor patch.
Are you referring to maybe a poor patch of the roof material, or are you referring
Just
to
the ridge count, the ridge count. That's all.
I see.
It's an observation.
Once again, where is it?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Marashi, but I believe you may be referring to
Yes,
like
you
the
see how that's
line that comes across.
you see how that's a different color than the regular roof material? See right there to the right, at the far right, that matches completely all the way, even the ridge cap. And then all of a sudden the ridge cap changes completely to a different material. And it's the different material all the way to where it meets the other roof line. That's all.
I'd sure be glad when we start meeting in person so we can get a better view of this.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I could just clarify Commissioner Marashi's comment. I have the opportunity to look at photos that I've taken on site that can't be shown on the screen, unfortunately, but I see what he's referring to. I guess if you're looking at the image, and it's hard to see, there's asphalt or composition shingle that caps that ridge, and it's the same material as the rest of the roof. While you go left towards this, I guess, valley or ridge, that same material is not capping the ridge. It's exposed with another material that I'm assuming is still weatherproofing, but that's just the comment that he's referring to.
Oh, the
Exactly.
white line. Are you referring to that white line? It
That's
looks like
right.
a white
That-
line.
That's right, yes.
White or tan,
Okay.
yes.
It looks like a white line, just a plain white line going across. Is that what you're talking about, Commissioner Marashi?
That's correct.
Okay, now I see it. Now I see it. Okay. We can ask the applicant, if the applicant is here, to comment on that, okay? Any other questions to the staff from any of the commissioner?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Carpenter.
Okay,
What is
go ahead.
this? I'm sorry, excuse me. What is the significance of that ownership period? Why was that brought up if it's not relevant?
Was that
sorry.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
That- And I'm sorry, what was the question?
Well, you made a point of mentioning the ownership for the 3 generations or 3 decades, but it's not relative, as Vice Chair Rush pointed out. It's 90 years old. So what is the significance of that ownership period? Is that something more to it?
Commissioner, remind.
My curiosity was whether or not the original owner still owns the property, because he said that it was still in original ownership, is what I understood him to say, for 3 decades, and yet the house is 90 years old. So I couldn't figure out, does the original family still own it? Obviously, the original owner doesn't own it. He's long dead, but I just wondered if that was what was the deal. That would make it quite unique. Is it a bearing on whether or not it should be included? No.
Yeah, that's my question in a nutshell. Yeah, what relevance does that have to the property now?
My idle
Thank you.
property.
Okay, all right. I think I'm going, let's move on. Okay, any other questions to staff on the presentation? Okay, if not, Madam Secretary, do we have any written communication?
We do not have any written communication on this item.
Okay, and with that, the public hearing is now open. I hope the applicant is on the line with the applicant, Amy Raphael. like to speak?
Is the applicant on the line? Applicant is on the line.
Say that again.
Is she not?
Is the applicant on the line? We have six applicants or six members who are not staff or the commission that are on this call, and it does not appear that any of them are the applicant for this item.
Okay, fine. Thank you so much, very much. Okay, with that, well, let's move on. The applicant is not on the line. Is there now any phone comments from the public, Madam Secretary?
This item, please select the hand icon if you're participating via Zoom, or press star 9 if you are calling in. We'll wait about 10 seconds. Chair, we do not have any speakers for this item.
Okay, fine. Then I will now declare the public hearing is now closed. Does the commission have any final questions of staff? Okay. With that, then I will entertain a motion to, number 1, adopt a resolution approving Historic Resource Commission application number 2021-05 and Historic Register categorization number 2021-05. Number 2, recommend that the City Council authorize the city manager and clerk of the council to execute the attached mills agreement with Amy Raphael, subject to non-substantive changes approved by the city manager and the city attorney. Do I have someone to make that motion?
So moved.
Who's that?
Vice Chair Rush.
Vice Chair Rush, move. Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second, Mark McLaughlin.
Commissioner McLaughlin has second. Moved by Vice Chair Rush, second by Commissioner McLaughlin. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Yes, roll call vote. Commissioner Carpenter.
I would approve, and then I didn't get to make a comment on, I would think that ridge line needs to be repaired to match the rest of the house, if we can make that conditional.
You've already called for the question. You've got it. You're in the middle of the voting.
Okay, then I would approve.
Commissioner Hardy. I believe you're on mute.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Marashi.
Yes.
Commissioner Schiff.
Approved.
Commissioner Peña Sarmiento.
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier. Right. Commissioner McLaughlin.
Aye.
Vice Chair Rush.
Aye.
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 Chair Christie.
Aye.
Motion passes by majority vote with Commissioner Frazier absent.
Okay, even though that Mrs. Raphael is not here, let's everybody give her a hand. Let's approve. Yes. On. Woo-hoo. Congratulations. Okay, here we go. This is the time and place for the consider item number 3, Historic Resource Commission application number 2021-07. Historic Register categorization number 2021-07 and Historic Property Preservation Agreement number 2021-07 for the property located at 2344 North Riverside Drive. Please note, decision on this matter is final unless appealed within 10 calendar days. Before we begin, do any commissioners have anything they wish to disclose with regards to this item?
Is this Harris and Nancy Feldman?
That's correct.
That's
I-
correct.
I need to recuse myself at this point in time because of neighborhood proximity.
Okay, then the 500 feet, the proximity, okay. Thank you for disclosing that, Commissioner McLaughlin. Okay, anyone else? Okay, with that, staff will now provide a brief presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next property for listing and mills at consideration is the Menton Barker House located at 2344 North Riverside Drive within the Floral Park neighborhood. The Menton Barker House is a Spanish colonial revival style house constructed in 1925. It qualifies for listing in the register under Criterion 1 as a representative example of a mid-sized Spanish colonial revival residence. The recommended categorization is contributive because it contributes to the character and history of Floral Park and is a good example of a Spanish colonial revival style architecture. Character defining features of the house that should be preserved include, but may not be limited to, the partially gabled and tiled roof, which can be seen here. You can't see on this image, but the partially gabled refers to the fact that there's a flat roof towards the back, and then this is the tiled roof here. The stucco exterior, the main entryway, archway, and French doors, which again can't be seen from this angle. The fenestration or windows, including the arched living room window that can be seen here. The U-shaped facade embracing the front entry off of a patio. Staff recommends that the commission approve HRCA 2021-07 and HRC 2021-07 and recommend that the City Council authorize HPPA 2021-07. I'd be happy to answer questions at this time.
Okay, thank you so much. Does the commission have any questions of staff? Please raise your hand. I'm sorry, I need to see if anybody raised their hand. Question? Okay, I'm sorry. I can't see. Okay. Okay, staff. And with that, Madam Secretary, do we have any written communication?
We do not have any written communication on this item.
Okay, with that, I now declare the public hearing is now open. Would the applicant like to speak of the matter? Do we have either Harris or Nancy? Is it Feldman?
Feldman.
I believe they were earlier.
I'm here. I don't know if you can hear me.
Okay. Hello?
Hello, do not wish to speak. I'm not either.
I'm sorry. Do you, I'm sorry, did you say you did or did not wish to speak?
I do not wish to speak.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you.
Does the commission have any comments or questions of the applicant? Okay, if not, we will now take phone comments from the public Madam Secretary, do we have any members of the public that would like to comment?
If you would like to comment on this item, please select the hand icon if you are participating via Zoom, or press star 9 if you are calling in. I'll wait about 10 seconds to see if we have any callers. We do not have any callers, Chair.
Thank you so much. And with that, I now declare the public hearing now closed. Does the commission have any final questions of staff? No? Okay. Okay, then I entertain a motion, number 1, to adopt a resolution approving Historic Resource Commission application number 2021-07 and Historic Register categorization number 2021-07. 2, recommend that the City Council authorize the city manager and the clerk of the council to execute the attached Mills Act agreement with Harris and Nancy Feldman, subject to non-substantive changes approved by the city manager and the city attorney.
So moved.
Who did that?
Vice Chair Rush.
Vice Chair Rush moved. Is there a second?
Second, Commissioner Marashi.
Second by Commissioner Marashi. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Commissioner Carpenter,
Approve.
Commissioner Hardy,
Yes.
Commissioner Marashi,
Yes.
Commissioner Schiff,
Yes.
Commissioner Pena Sarmiento,
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier, Vice Chair Rush,
Aye.
Chair Christie.
Yes.
Motion passes by majority vote with Commissioner Frazier absent and Commissioner McLaughlin abstaining.
Congratulations to the Feldman. Yeah, let's give them a hand, folks.
Oh, thank
Yes.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations.
All right. Thank you so much.
Woo. All right, thank you so much. Okay, now this is the time and place to consider item number 4, Historic Resource Commission application number 2021-08, Historic Register categorization number 2021-08, and Historic Property Preservation Agreement number 2021-08 for the property located at 2339 North Heliotrope Drive. Please note, decision on this matter is final unless appealed within 10 calendar days. Before we begin, do any commissioners have anything they wish to disclose with regards to this item? Is there a hand behind you, Ally? There's a hand. No, you didn't. There's a hand behind you. Looks like it's raised.
No, it's all right.
Oh my goodness. Okay. With that, do we have any written, Madam Secretary, do we have any written communication?
No written communication on this item.
Okay, and with that, I now declare the public hearing is now open. Would the applicant like to speak on the matter?
Madam Chair, I've yet to give that presentation.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. Now your staff presentation. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Pedro.
The fourth item on tonight's agenda is a request to place the property address as 209 North Heliotrope Drive on the register and to execute a Mills Act agreement with the property owner. The Reddit house is a colonial revival house constructed in 1941. The house qualifies for listing in the register as a nicely detailed example of the late colonial revival style in Santa Ana. The recommended categorization is contributive because it contributes to the overall character of the neighborhood, and it's representative, and it is a representative example of a late colonial revival architecture. Some character defining exterior features of the house that should be preserved include, but may not be limited to, its symmetrically composed facade, the sheathing of wide clapboard trimmed by the grooved end boards. So it's tough to see on here, but the clapboard siding is a character defining feature. The recessed entry with paneled reveals. So the paneled reveals are on the edge, and then this is the recessed entry. The half-height side lights and the paneled door, which kind of obscured by this bush or tree. The facade fenestration or windows that include 8/8 double hung sash windows framed by these shutters, and that's clearly visible on these pictures. Staff recommends that the Commission approve HRCA 2021-08 and HRC 2021-08 and recommend that the City Council authorize HPPA 2021-08. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Okay. Now, does the commission have any question? Let me start again. Does the commission have any questions for staff? I don't see any hands risen. Okay, Madam Secretary, do we have any written communications?
No written communication on this item.
Okay, and with that, I now declare the public hearing is now open. Would the applicant like to speak on this application? Mr. Or Mrs. Jackson?
Hi, this is Pete and Evan Jackson. Just thank you to everybody on the board. It's really an honor to live in this special home in this special neighborhood. So we're very excited to be up for consideration for the Mills Act. Thank you all very much.
Thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. Does any of the commissioners wish to comment or question the applicant? Okay. We will now take comments from the public. Madam Secretary, do we have any public wish to speak on the on this application?
If you'd like to speak on this item, please select the hand icon or press *9 if you're participating by phone. We'll wait a few seconds. We do not have any speakers on this item.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, and with that, I now declare this public hearing is now closed. Now, does the commission have any final questions of staff? Okay, then I'd like to entertain. Is there a question? No? Okay. Then I entertain a motion to adopt the resolution approving Historic Resource Commission application number 2021-08 and Historic Register categorization number 2021-08. Recommend number 2, recommend that the City Council authorize the City Manager and Clerk of the Council to execute the attached Mills Act agreement with Peter and Evan Jackson, subject to non-substantive changes approved by the City Manager and the City Attorney. Someone like to move that?
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Rush. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Commissioner Hardy.
Yeah.
Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Yes, roll call. Commissioner Carpenter.
Approve.
Commissioner Hardy.
Yes.
Commissioner Marashi.
Yes.
Commissioner Schiff.
Approved.
Commissioner Peña Sarmiento.
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier. Commissioner McLaughlin.
Aye.
Vice Chair Rush.
Aye.
Chair Christie.
Yes.
Motion passes by majority vote with Commissioner Frazier absent.
Very good. Everybody, please unmute and give them a hand.
Bravo.
Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Evans Jackson. Congratulations.
Thank you, everybody.
Welcome. Hi. Oh, is that, go back to Jackson's, go back. Is there, oh, how cute. Oh my gosh, what's his name? Or is that a girl?
This is our son, Ace, who turns 1 year old a week from today. He's a
Oh
Mozak
my
baby.
gosh. Hi. Oh, is he cute? Well, congratulations again. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Okay. Okay, moving on. This is the time and place to consider item number 5, historic exterior modification application number 2021-01 for the property located at 2529 North Valencia Street. Please note, decision on this matter is final unless appealed within 10 calendar days. Before we begin, do any of the commissioners have anything they wish to disclose with regards to this item? Hearing not, the staff will now provide a brief presentation. Staff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The last item for your consideration is a request to permit exterior modifications to a historic structure located at 2529 North Valencia Street, which is known as the RD Birdhouse. I do want to clarify that there was a minor typo on the reports, which instead listed the house as the RD House. It should be the RD Birdhouse. The
I'm
property
sorry,
is
what's
located
that again? I'm sorry, Pete, would you repeat that again, Peter?
Sure. There was a minor typo on the reports, which listed the house as the RD House, letter R, letter D House. The actual name is the RD Birdhouse, the full name.
Okay, thank you so much.
The property is located on the east side of the North Valencia Street in Park Santiago. The RD Birdhouse was placed on the Santa Ana Historic Register in 2017, and it was categorized as contributed. The house has distinctive architectural features of the Craftsman bungalow style. It has distinctive features of ranch house style, and it was built in 1937. Have the wrong architectural style there. The house is characterized by the facade, which includes the shiplap wood siding and the brick and a weeping mortar finish, covering a majority of the front elevation. So it's tough to make out in this photo, but if you can picture the mortar for the brick is kind of protruding a little bit. That's kind of the expression that architects and historians describe it as a weeping mortar finish. The front elevation offers 2 large bay windows, which can be seen on this photo, with 3 individual single hung wood windows, 1 on each kind of elevation of the bay. and a standing seam awning just above the windows. There are two different porthole windows, which can also be seen on this photo. Here's one and here's the second. The remaining windows throughout the home are solid single-hung wood windows with wood sills. Character-defining features of the house include the materials and finishes, including the weeping mortar finish and the wood siding, the roof design and detailing, and the original windows and doors. The proposed exterior modifications will include a 153 square foot addition to accommodate a new guest bedroom, and 153 square foot addition for a new great room. The total square footage of the proposed area would be 406 square feet. In addition, the overall work would include interior renovations to an existing master bedroom and front and rear yard improvements, including new landscaping and hardscaping, a patio cover, and a new pool and spa. The new bedroom addition would extend an existing residential wing approximately 19 feet towards the rear or east of the property and will be approximately 11 feet in height, which is lower than the existing building height of 13 feet. It would include a hipped roof design with composition shingle and include new wood hung windows and smooth stucco with a trowel finish. You can see the proposed areas of improvement on this existing site plan and on the next slide, which is the proposed site plan. So this is up right now is the existing site plan. These areas in red are the areas of the addition. Excuse me. And then this is the proposed site plan. Again, the areas in red show the proposed areas of addition. So you can see that right now there's current voids in those two areas, and they're proposed to be infilled with the addition. The great room addition would enclose an existing rear patio area by extending the rear of the residence approximately 29 feet towards the east. Like the bedroom addition, the great room addition would be approximately 11 feet in height, lower than the existing building height of 13 feet. The addition would incorporate new floor-to-ceiling patio doors and create a new U-shaped rear patio area, which can also be seen in this proposed site plan. To provide an enhanced rear yard, the applicant is proposing a wrap-around rear patio, approximately 8 feet in height. All the work is proposed to be located towards the rear of the property. So all of this work, these two areas of infill and the wrap-around patio cover and those improvements are proposed to be towards the rear. The next slide does show the floor plan. Again, to kind of make it easier for the commission, these are the two areas of improvement. The next couple of slides do show the proposed exterior modifications along all elevations. This first one is the north or left elevation. The second one is the south or right elevation. On this elevation, you can see the patio that's proposed towards the rear. This next slide shows the west or the front elevation. And the last slide shows the east or rear elevation. This is where all the areas of improvement are happening, including the patio, the room addition, and the great room addition. So you can see that the proposed height for all of these improvements are smaller than the existing height and roof ridge of the property. The proposed exterior modifications are considered a rehabilitation project, and as such were evaluated against the 10 criteria of the Secretary of Interior Standards for treatment of historic properties. Staff determined that the project complies with the Secretary of Interior Standards. The analysis found that the proposed addition would be compatible and consistent with the existing architectural elements that reflect the original style. The proposed addition is located at the rear in an area that is not readily visible from the public right-of-way. And important spatial relationships characterizing the ranch style will not be disturbed, as the addition is only a single-story addition positioned to the rear of the existing house and will not alter the existing roof line. Most importantly, due to the additive nature, the addition will allow for the option for it to be removed in such a way that the essential form and integrity of the historic property and its environment would be unimpaired. With that, staff recommends that the HRC adopt a resolution to approve a certificate of appropriateness for historic exterior modification application number 2021-01. That does conclude staff's presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you so much. Okay. Does the commission have any questions of staff?
This is Commissioner Marashi. I just have one question. It has
Okay,
nothing to
go ahead,
do with the
Commissioner.
modifications. It has to do with the original photograph is really poor. And I'm just wondering, I know that it's supposed to be representative of the house when it was on the HRC registry, but I'm just wondering if it's possible to take a new picture and put that in there.
Thank you, Commissioner Marashi. You're correct. The purpose of the DPR form, which is that template that describes the property, is to establish a baseline of when the property was listed. But certainly, if it's the HRC's wish to update the photo, we can certainly do that.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Rush?
In looking at, I'm pretty much okay with what's being proposed, except that as I look at the proposed, the north elevation, that slide, yeah, back, there you are. That area to the left, gosh, that looks so plain compared to the rest of the house with the fenestration and doors and so forth on the right. Is there some way to give that some detail so it doesn't look so vacant, so empty?
Thank you, Commissioner Rush. I believe the image, or I guess the area that you're referring to is here, and then and then over here, correct? Let me take a look. I believe that's actually the existing garage. The addition doesn't extend past the existing massing that's out there. So if you look at the floor plan, that north elevation is on this end.
Yeah.
So that blank wall is the garage that you've shown. And then the bedroom addition is right behind that garage that doesn't really protrude beyond the edge of that garage wall. So we're not really seeing the addition on that elevation. We're seeing the existing conditions of that garage. If I can go back.
You mean that's kind of hidden by shrubbery or a block wall or something?
Well, maybe I can clarify, if we could clarify your question. Are you concerned about the addition being blank and not including any sort of windows and fenestration or anything?
Yes, I am. But I mean, if it's a garage, it's largely hidden by the neighbor's fence, which is, 3 feet away and 7 foot tall. Well, then it's kind of a and if it's a garage, well, it's a non-issue, but it just doesn't look right. If you look at it, you get this big giant rectangle that's blank versus the rest of the area, which, has windows and doors and some detail. But again, maybe is that, do I understand you to say that's the garage?
Correct. That is obscured by, landscaping, and it is located towards the rear. Maybe this is a better photo or illustration. So this side plan is showing that garage there. So usually there isn't any sort of.
And the house, if I remember, the house faces west, right?
Correct. The front of the house is facing west.
Right. So okay. Yeah, never mind. It's fine. I'm okay with it.
Do you have any more questions, Vice Chair Rush?
No.
Okay. Any other commissioner have any questions? Commissioner Marashi?
No questions.
Chair Christie, you're muted.
Okay, how's that? Okay, there we go. Okay, any more? Okay. Secretary, have we received any written communication?
We have not received any written communication.
Okay, then I declare the public hearing is now open. Would the applicant like to speak on the matter? The applicant on the line?
Madam Commissioner, my name is Nicholas Coleman. I'm actually the architect and the representative for the ownership, and they should also be on the line, or at least they were at the very beginning. And we just want to thank you all for your kind consideration.
Thank you so much, Mr. Coleman. Okay, does the commission have any questions of the applicant? If not, we will now take phone comments from the public. Madam Secretary, do we have any members of the public that would like to comment?
If you would like to comment on this item, please select the hand icon, or if you're calling in, please dial *9. We'll wait a few seconds to see if we have any callers. We do not have any callers.
Very good on this. Okay, then, okay, and with that, I now declare the public hearing closed. Does the commission have any final questions of staff? Nope. Then I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt the resolution approving a certificate of appropriateness for historic exterior modification application number 2021-01.
This is Commissioner Marashi. I would like to amend the motion to take a new east-facing elevation photograph and include that in the report, because I can't tell whether that is stucco, brick, or anything else, and I would like to bring out those details, since those are highlighted details in the report.
Okay, Commissioner Marashi has amended the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Vice Chair Rush. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Yes, roll call. Commissioner Carpenter.
Approve.
Commissioner Hardy.
Yes.
Commissioner Marashi.
Yes.
Commissioner Schiff.
Yes.
Commissioner Pena Sarmiento.
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier. Commissioner McLaughlin.
Aye.
Vice Chair Rush.
Aye.
Chair Christie.
Yes.
Motion passes by majority vote with Commissioner Frazier absent.
Congratulations to Ms. Jimenez. And thank you, Mr. Coleman, for being on the line. Thank you.
Thank you all so very much. We very much appreciate it.
Quite welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. And we have a quick question, if that's okay.
I'm sorry, who is that?
This is the Jimenez family.
Oh, Jimenez family. Hi, how are you? Congratulations.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Commissioner Marashi for suggesting a new photo. And could it be done after the renovation? Is that so that it can ideally be in the best?
I don't see why not, because you're not changing the front end there, and you still have all the detail, and it would look like the existing photograph, just the contrast would look better.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you once again. Okay. Thank you, and congratulations again to the Jimenez family. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, this concludes the public hearings. Moving on to the work study session. Senior Assistant City Attorney John Funk will provide the Historic Resource Commissioner training. Please note, no action will be taken on this item. John, you've been waiting in the wings. You're on stage.
Well, good evening, Chair Christie and the HRC commissioners. I hope you're doing well this evening. I'll say at the outset, I don't know if I can promise such an exciting finale to this item as we saw with the previous 5, but I will certainly endeavor to provide you with some what I think is very helpful information. Again, my name is John Funk. I'm one of the assistant city attorneys with the city attorney's office here in Santa Ana. From time to time, we're asked to provide this type of training to commissions, sometimes when they receive 1 or more new members or just on the request of the chair or the executive director. And so we're very happy to do that. Some of what I'm about to review, you will see took place this very evening in the deliberation or in the conduct of your meetings. So it may not be a complete surprise, but I will again attempt to give you what we think is some valuable information to keep in mind as you fulfill your service as commissioners. So with that, thanks in advance for your attention, and we'll turn to our first slide. Just a brief history of the commission. It's actually enshrined in the municipal code. It's established by section 2370. And it forms part of the city's systems of boards, commissions, and committees. And this is a way for essentially the city to tap into the expertise of its residents on certain matters. It provides a way for residents to render their input or their specialized experience to bring that to bear on the city's decision-making process on certain often specialized issues, just like the type that you see in your work as commissioners. Oh, we can go to the next slide. Thanks. As you know, you probably know there are 9 members who are residents of the city who sit on the commission, and you are all selected for your expertise and experience in architecture, history, architectural history, planning, similar areas. Your appointment and the time at which you serve are all governed by our code, and I've listed the sections there. The 9 members on HRC do include 1 member from the Planning Commission and 1 member from the Community Development Commission as well. HRC's relationship with council. It often acts in an advisory role. And when I say advisory, that means that the commission makes recommendations to the city council, but the council has the final say. A good example of this are the Mills Act agreements that you routinely review and recommend to the council for approval. Additionally, you can recommend other policies, but the council itself has the final say so as the lead policymakers in the city. The specific powers and duties of HRC are outlined again in the municipal code at section 2374. I've excerpted a few of the key duties here, again, some of which you executed this very evening. The first is conferring historical recognition on eligible properties. That criteria is in our code as well at chapter 30. You also recommend to the city council historic property preservation agreements, otherwise known as Mills Act agreements. And in general, you encourage to a more robust public understanding and involvement in the historic and architectural heritage of our beautiful city here. But what makes an effective commission member? I've just listed a few excerpts that I think make for an effective commissioner. You can see them here: balanced, level-headed, practical, unbiased, open-minded, inquisitive. There were some very detailed questions, for example, asked tonight. A very high level of engagement, which everyone tonight exhibited very nicely. No conflicts of interest, and just a real sincere desire to be engaged. Engaged commissions make great communities. And in my experience, I find HRC a particularly engaged one. You certainly work with staff. That is something that perhaps the chair does more than anyone else, and that's certainly permissible. It is important to note that staff does work and is accountable to the city manager. most directly, and it's not generally within any commission's authority direct work of the staff. But certainly to discuss and engage them and ask questions is fine, just as we saw tonight. Here is the sequence of a general, this is what an action item generally looks like in front of the meeting. And again, we saw this, Chair Christie, I know, was very experienced in taking the commission through these steps. But first, the chair announces the agenda item and states the subject. The commission hears any public comment or presentation of staff report, both of which we saw tonight. Next, the chair invites a motion on the item and announces the name of the member making the motion. There's a second to that motion, and thereby formally putting it before the commission for a vote. Without a second, the motion does not typically move ahead. The chair restates the motion, and anyone else is given the chance to speak if they wish. Everyone speaks once at a time, and after all have spoken, then the vote is taken. And as you know, the motion carries by an affirmative vote of more than 1/2 of the members. All the motions tonight carried by exactly that standard. I think it's particularly neat in this commission, I don't see it always, is that there's such a nice celebration at the end of it. So before you got to the motions tonight, the historical designations, there was something called the consent calendar. And I still believe there's one item on that to return to, if I recall correctly. But the consent calendar consists of routine matters, ordinary matters that are not subject to a lot of discussion, and they are handled summarily in one batch, if you will. They're moved by a single motion, and they are acted upon, all at once. Hence the name consent calendar. It's ordinarily taken before new business items. A couple procedural points to make here. A motion for reconsideration can be made by any member who voted with the majority on an item. If he or she, say, changes his mind, they can make a motion for reconsideration before the commission. And that motion also requires a second and then is voted upon. The only member who can make a motion for reconsideration, however, is the one who voted with the majority in the first place. And also amending motions. We saw that again just tonight. A member may move to amend a motion on the floor. The motion as amended typically requires a second, and it can have any debate or discussion. And if the motion to amend carries, then it becomes the motion on the floor, as was the case tonight. So I'm explaining all of this, but you already are doing it so well. It may this may not seem overly exciting, but again, I think it's helpful to have all in one presentation, and you can refer to these slides. Again, we can make them available to you if you'd like. Bylaws are what govern the HRC. They govern all the city's commissions and boards. All the city's commissions and legislative bodies have them. The latest version for the HRC was approved in November of 2020. And if you're looking to obtain copies, you can get those from Sarah. I know that she will be happy to give you a copy. Importantly, all meetings at the city, including HRC meetings, are what I'm going to call open and public. That's a very significant term because it's the standard by which city meetings are governed in terms of transparency. The main state law that has been in effect for over 50 years here in California, it's called the Ralph M. Brown Act, and essentially requires local government business to be conducted openly and publicly with very, very few exceptions. It applies to all city commissions and boards here in Santa Ana. It does not apply to ad hoc committees that feature less than a quorum of the body. Ad hoc committees are ordinarily temporary committees that are formed with the purpose of studying one select specific topic. And meetings of ad hoc committees can actually take place in not an open and public setting, but it's a very limited exception. This is just a statement of the public policy behind the Brown Act. California, like many other states, has concluded there's much more to be gained than lost by conducting public business in the open. And really it encourages the trust and confidence by the citizens that we serve, knowing that their business is being conducted out in the open and not behind closed doors. What is a meeting? That question, as I'm saying it, has taken on some different dimensions here in the COVID era. I would not necessarily have thought the same maybe a year ago. So we're having our meeting tonight by video conference or by Zoom. Still a meeting, I can assure you, and still subject to the Brown Act. But in general, a meeting is a gathering of any of the majority of members of a body to hear or discuss an item of city business or even potential city business. It all requires a notice, an agenda, and a period for public comment, exactly what we had tonight. So is a meeting just face-to-face? Typically they are, but under the Brown Act, a meeting can occur in some different scenarios as well, including Zoom, for example. There are some other exceptions to the Brown Act and as to what constitutes a meeting. Here, as this slide explains, it doesn't apply to any of your individual contacts with any other person, say, including the staff member. For example, if Chair Christie were to contact Executive Director Tai about a question or some clarification, that would not be considered a meeting under the Brown Act. So those types of individual contacts are permitted. What is not permitted, however, is to essentially have a meeting in a different way, in what the Brown Act refers to a serial format, which I'll explain a little more in the next slide. You can't have a meeting in a way that is to sidestep the Brown Act, essentially, by certain communications that are done in serial fashion. And I'll explain those a bit in the next slide. It typically involves email or phone. The way we see, meetings occur that are meetings that don't look like traditional meetings. For example, if member A contacts member B, and B contacts member C, C contacts member D, until all these folks have reached a quorum, until a quorum has discussed, at least a quorum of the body has discussed, decided, and taken action on an item. It's a way of securing a concurrence on an item or action on an item without a typical meeting, but by contacting one after the other. The same effect can be had in what I call here the hub and spoke method. When, say, member A sequentially contacts B, C, and D, shares his or her position on a matter, for example, gains the concurrence of those members on that position. That is using a communication in a serial way to act on an item that would otherwise be acted in a meeting of the full body in an open and public setting. And those two things can violate the Brown Act when they are done. Those types of serial communications. I rarely see that here, and again, I don't mention that or any other potential Brown Act problems because we see them here at the city, but they're good for you to be aware of, just so you know what to avoid. Avoiding serial meetings is probably easiest by refraining from discussing agency business with the majority of your council members or your commission members, or sharing your views outside of a meeting. The most cautious or most conservative advice I could give would be to limit your views on positions or issues before the commission to the meetings themselves. I think that's probably the easiest way to look at it. You certainly can, though, again, communicate with staff, without violating the Brown Act. You can consult with city staff for questions. Those don't violate the Brown Act. But again, if you consult with enough members on the same issue and reach some action or decision on an item, then that becomes a meeting. There's some other things that are not a meeting. Attendance at seminars, community meetings, social or ceremonial occasions. The only caveat that I will make here is that if a majority of the commissioners are present at one of these types of meetings, you cannot discuss any items of city business, or else a meeting does result. So again, kind of the golden rule, if you will, is to keep in mind is that items of business before the HRC should best and only be discussed at HRC meetings, when the public is invited to hear the conversation, to ask questions, to make comments. Here are some recommendations for email. Here I'm just recommending avoiding sending emails to the whole commission if necessary. Again, only to avoid the appearance that you are looking to take some action on an item that you would ordinarily do in the context of a regular meeting. Each meeting is subject to notice and agenda requirements. For example, tonight's agenda was posted at least 72 hours in advance as required by the Brown Act. For special meetings, that is meetings usually focused on a single topic or a specific agenda item, those agendas must be posted 24 hours in advance. And on each agenda, you'll have a brief description of the agenda item, usually 20 words or less. The general rule is that only items that are agendized can be discussed in a meeting. There are some exceptions, but they're very, very limited and really are contained to the items I listed here in the slide. But in general, the only items that can be discussed in meeting are those that appear on the agenda, the written agenda. And that way, when you think about it, that avoids any surprise. The public, therefore, can't be taken by surprise that there was something that was discussed or acted upon at a city meeting at, say, for which he or she might wanted to have commented on. So there's no element or there's no item of business that takes place without the public knowing by way of the agenda. So really, it's transparency is the goal here. There are some other exceptions here in terms of discussing non-agenda items. You can ask questions of staff. Tonight, you ask questions of the applicant, for example. You can report on your own activities. You can ask staff to report back on a certain matter. You can request to place a matter on a future agenda. All these things, though, are really, they're more one-way in nature, and they're not new agenda items, if you will, that are being discussed, or agenda items that weren't agendized, I should say. Public participation is key to any meeting, and as we saw tonight, the chair invited public comment on each of the items. It's really a bedrock of all our meetings here at the city. The public is invited and encouraged to participate and offer their comments. Any comment pertaining to an agenda item usually is heard prior to the consideration of the item. That's why you saw tonight, the public was given the chance to speak before the commission took an action on the item. As you might imagine, that timing is intentional, only so that the commission will have the benefit of whatever is being said when the commissioners make up his or her mind, or before they do, I should say. There are some sessions that can take place out of the public eye. They're called closed sessions. HRC typically does not have them. The city council here is the main body that has closed sessions, and they usually feature very sensitive topics like personnel matters, pending litigation, other things that, the policy in the state of California is essentially that those items can be discussed out of the public eye, lest the city's positions on them somehow be prejudiced. How is the Brown Act enforced? It can be enforced by taking a legal action, but only after the city is given a chance to correct itself. It does not happen very frequently. In my time at the city, I don't think I've ever seen it happen, but it can be enforced by legal action. Compliance usually results more from regular training and self-regulation, just like we're doing tonight, making our commissioners and council members aware of the Brown Act, so as to avoid any violations. How to resolve one? The law itself doesn't state specifically how to cure or correct a violation, but the best method is usually to rescind the action being complained of and starting over. Social media. often a very hot topic, and it just had a few pointers about it here. By this time, you're probably well aware of all the things here on this slide, but I just thought it would be helpful to put them here. I guess as a lawyer, my attention is drawn to point number 6 because I see online conduct is used as evidence in litigation. But again, these are all things you're probably already well aware of. I often remind my own family that, I think the first point, the internet never does forget, and things usually stay out there, even if you think they're deleted. The city's got a very significant interest in expectation of deciding what is spoken on its websites and social media controlled by the city. And it controls those sites, as you might imagine. For any other sites, if you're posting and speaking about matters affecting the city, and if you identify yourself as a commission member, we ask that you clarify that the opinions you expressed are your own and not the city's opinions or the opinions of HRC. But I'm happy to say that social media does have a function, unless, the couple of my earlier slides suggest that it's taboo or off limits for city business. That's not the case, because the law was recently modernized to permit commission members and agency officials to use social media to answer questions, provide information to the public, or solicit information from the public. But there's a couple things that you still are forbidden to do. At least with respect to social media in the Brown Act. The first is you can't use social media to discuss among yourselves items of city business. This runs the risk of a meeting once again. If enough council members or commissioners use social media to discuss items of city business, including, say, the thumbs up or liking something, that could amount to taking action on an item of city business. I guess in the most modern of ways, if you will. And second, you cannot respond directly to any communication made by a fellow member on social media about city business. This again runs the risk of conducting city business outside the context of a traditional meeting. That brings us to the end of our slides. Again, I don't know if this is as jubilous as a finale as we've seen to our other items, but I hope this information has been helpful to you. If you have any further questions or want any clarifications either now, I'm happy to answer them, or going forward. Certainly let a executive director Ty or the recording secretary know, and they'll be happy to to put you in touch with me, or I can field them through them. But either way, I'm happy to help.
John, I have a scenario for you.
Okay. Hypotheticals, lawyers love those, right?
Okay. All right. We're on I'm chair of the HRC. I'm also a neighborhood association leader of 2 neighborhood associations. There is other neighborhood associations that have that are leaders in their association that have commissioners from the Historic Resource Commission. There is an issue before the city about preservation, okay? And we're coming together to discuss this before the city council on preservation. Have we violated anything? Even though we're commissioners, but we're neighborhood leaders, and we as neighborhood leaders and other interested cities are going before the council or going to wish to go before the council to talk on an action of preservation. Did you understand that?
I think if you allow me just to ask a quick question, I'd appreciate it. When you said, Chair Christie, you're going before the council, I take that's at a council meeting?
Or talking to council members and talking to council members, okay?
In like say by yourselves or as a group?
Well, let's put it, okay.
I guess I asked that question because I surely don't want to muddy the waters, but generally speaking, that the prohibition is against a majority of HRC commissioners discussing among themselves a matter of city business or developing some concurrence or taking action on an item of city business. So if you are discussing it with a council member, that without knowing anything more, that would not seem to me that you're taking an action on an item of city business. You're bringing it to the council member's attention for consideration. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, the item of preservation is each of us are talking to the ones that appointed us on this certain item. Okay. And we're also talking together about what actions that, recommendations we should talk to our council members about. And yet we're neighborhood leaders that are coming together, but we're also commissioners.
Well, certainly talking to your council members about the matter is permitted. As we saw, I think one of my slides tonight said that, you can certainly go to the council member who appointed you to discuss matters or to make recommendations. The majority of you talking together about an item of city business or an item that could come before the HRC, that is a little more concerning, just because that's a majority of the members discussing a matter of business that could come before the HRC outside the context of a meeting. So I would tend to recommend avoiding that. Even I understand that you're doing this in a dual capacity is what you're suggesting in your neighborhood community representative. However, those lines are pretty easily blurred, I think, in this. In what I think would be seen more would be your capacity as an HRC commissioner for purposes of that analysis.
So
it really, would someone to Chair Christie, it would depend on some additional facts too. Exactly when you said preservation, exactly what about preservation? Could it come before the HRC? I mean, the HRC's powers and duties are prescribed by the code. If it doesn't have a chance, or if it's not possible, or if it's outside of the jurisdiction of the HRC, then it looks more permissible. But if it's something that could come before you, and a majority of commissioners are discussing it outside the context of a meeting, that starts to get a little more, it starts to get closer to the line. What I would recommend doing, if you would like to have that discussion, is to put it on the agenda, for all the commissioners to discuss openly and publicly. To me, that's the safest way.
Chair Christie, if I could add, I think there was one other aspect of your question regarding talking to.
I think I don't want to bring the project up or anything like that because, I was just trying to do it as a hypothetical thing so that we don't get in, go ahead. Executive Director Charlie, go ahead. I'm sorry.
If you want to individually talk to your council members or dual council members, that's entirely appropriate. If all commissioners wants to speak to a council member individually, that's also appropriate. But if you have a majority of the members speaking to one council member at the same time, that would not be appropriate.
But if we're coming together with other neighborhood association or leaders in the city over a specific action that's going before the city council, does that prohibit us?
I think, John, where the chair is asking for some clarity is that if there is a representation of a view as a resident versus representation as a view of being a commission. In the past, I have, I know it's a very thin line, but in the past I have advised commissioner to refrain from, acting or discussing a business item as a residence, even though you are either in neighborhood leadership, and maintain your status so that you would be able to continue to vote on any issue as a HRC. If you express too early or share a perspective, you could be asked to remove yourself if an applicant finds that the view is prejudicing their application. So I don't think there's a clear yes or no, but that would be the advice.
I would concur with Executive Director Ty's advice. I do think that is the safest approach. I can understand, Chair Christie, though, where your concern is that, are you, if you're really there in your individual capacity, if you will, I suppose that you could state that up front and be very clear about it. However, the fact does remain you're an HRC commissioner as well. And I think that line could get blurred very quickly. And I don't think anyone would want to see you or any other commissioners, have to check out of an item because of something like that. I think that, one workaround, for lack of a better word, is for you to approach that person individually. I know that's not as efficient necessarily, but that is a way of getting your view across nevertheless, and without feeling like you're hamstrung or you're muzzled somehow.
Okay. I saw Commissioner Marashi's hands up.
Vice Chair Rush had his hand up first, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mine showed yours first for some.
Okay.
Vice Chair Rush, go ahead.
I think John Funk answered my question.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
John Funk answered my question between he and Executive Director Min. They answered my question.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Marashi?
John, who actually sets the agenda? And how do we as commissioners, let's say we do want to discuss something at a meeting and come up with a consensus as a whole group and present that to the city council, how do we as commissioners get a chance to bring that up and put that on the agenda? I don't seem to see a mechanism to do that lately.
Yeah, there's no express mechanism for that. In my experience, typically the commission works with its executive director for direction on that matter. There is a mechanism for the commission to request agenda items on its own agenda. The commission certainly exists to advise the city council. So it's possible for you to place an agenda item to discuss that. But it's typically done in coordination with the executive director. And I would recommend that to the chair, the vice chair, and the members. If there is something they do wish to put before the city council, that it be that they consult with the executive director and the chair.
Does that answer your question, Commissioner Marashi?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else for our city attorney? Sarmiento Penta, Commissioner.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair Alberta. I just had a question. So in this theoretical interaction, if we do not discuss anything publicly and our communication, our private, like email communication, is under the majority, like 3 people or under, and we all happen to be neighborhood leaders that are discussing a neighborhood issue, or advocating for or organizing around a neighborhood issue that does not appear on our agenda. It has not been an agenda item. It's never been an agenda item. It's not expected to be an upcoming agenda item, because by then the action will be done and it really won't matter to us, I guess, unless it's in the far future when we're no longer commissioners, current commissioners. So would we be able to discuss something, and as neighborhood advocates, if we are just ensure that we do not discuss it with the majority of people who also happen to be commissioners?
Sure. Thanks for your question. I think I can answer the different components of it. Maybe the first thing to state, most important, is that the prohibition really applies to a discussion of a majority of the members of the commission. So in your scenario, if it's less than a majority, it doesn't rise to the level of what the Brown Act considers a meeting, and so it would not be subject to the Brown Act requirements. That being said, I would advise it's getting very close. In your scenario, there's 3. And even if that technically is not a violation of the Brown Act, it also, like I said, it is getting close to violating the spirit of it as well. If there are, at least a handful of commissioners who are discussing an item outside of the public eye, but technically anything less than a majority would be permissible. Second, I think your second point had to do with if that's true, or irrespectively, if it's an item of city business that is not current or agendized, is it still off limits? And the answer is yes, because the prohibition applies to an item of city business or potential city business. In other words, anything that could become city business. So the prohibition would apply to that as well. The bright line rule, though, is really the first one I mentioned in your scenario, and that is the number of members who are discussing it. But again, it's getting pretty close, and I don't know if I could, would openly advise you to undertake that discussion. But I can also tell you that if it falls below a majority of the body in question, the legislative body in question, then it does not become a meeting, a quote unquote meeting under the Brown Act that would be subject to the Brown Act requirements of notice, posting, and public participation. So, does that help? I hope.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
I have Commissioner Hardy's hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Christie. So if I understand correctly, as commissioners, we shouldn't be discussing anything that is city business or potentially could be city business, even though other neighborhood leaders and residents that have concerns can discuss these things. Is that correct?
Well, yes and no. You certainly can discuss them. I think that we're focusing on that discussion as when it consists of a majority of the commission together as a majority.
And so what is the number that I understand that you get close to it? It's like it's still kind of dangerous. But what is the majority number?
There are 9 spots on the commission, so it would be 5.
So it would be 5. Okay, I appreciate that.
Now, the majority is measured against the number of seats on the commission.
Okay. So it makes it really difficult when there is something within your neighborhood or in your community that somebody needs to be outspoken about just to make folks aware. Otherwise, something can come down and nobody knows about it, and it's like too late.
Well, and you can certainly do that even if 4 or 5 of you are at at an event. Each one of you can do that. It's just the collective discussion.
That so one person can discuss it, but people just have to listen and take what you have to say one way or the other.
Yeah, like for example, what would be prohibited is if 5 people were present and each took a stance publicly and even passionately, would be what would cross the line would be for after that, those 5 people to come together and develop a position on that issue.
Right. Or if it came before them and then they would be having to take a stand. All right. So it's very, it's a fine line there, I guess.
Well, it's really, and it's not intended to, please know, it certainly is not intended to silence anyone's views. I would be, remiss to suggest that. The purpose of the Brown Act is to encourage, items of the commission's business to be discussed in public, action items that are before the commission or potential items that could become before the commission. The intent is for those items to be discussed in the context of a meeting with the majority of the commissioners present.
So if we're thinking we would like to ask something, a particular item to be on the agenda, then that would automatically be something that we wouldn't want to discuss as a majority. Is that true?
I would not recommend that, no.
Okay, thank you.
And if John, if you can make a clarification, I think when we say city business, it means city business under the purview of the HRC and not
Yes.
other topic.
Yes, thank you, Executive Director Tai. I know I keep using the word city business, but it's really commission business. Forgive me. Thank you for the clarification, though.
Are there any other questions for Attorney Funk? Let's give John a hand. Hey, John, thank you so much for your
Well,
training.
thank you. I appreciate the robust discussion following.
Wait I think Commissioner Hardy has her hand up again.
Oh, okay.
You're muted. You're muted.
Thank you, Chairperson Christie. I just do have one more question. How would we know if something was commission business? If it fell under that realm that would make it ultra sensitive?
I think when it's related to historical application or issues that are related to your purview, whether it may be relating to an application of that needs to be on review that you are aware of, or if it's an issue relating to historical preservation that would come before you for decision, such as any proposed change to the regulations that you would want to ask for. So those types of issues should not be discussed outside of the realm of the commission discussion. Now, you can bring those issues up during the meeting and discuss it when it's agendized during a meeting. And, you know, if appropriate, you can also ask staff to follow up and do research and make recommendations. And ultimately, the question previously about whether you can take those issues all the way up to the city council, we have done that in the past. Last year, when the commission asked staff to review a whole host of issues that have been longstanding, culminating in a memo and recommendation to the city council, therefore instigated some changes, major changes to the process, including the costs of the application. So those are the type of issues that you should be engaging among yourself. Just to give you some clear example, outside of the discussion of the HRC in a majority. So let's go back to that memo, for example, on the discussion of the cost of the application. If 3 or 4 of you talk about it among yourself, you are borderline, but if you have a 5th person, you cannot talk about it outside of a meeting, right? So that, while it's not an application for historical designation, but it is an issue that is under the purview and the parameter of the HRC. So I know it's vague, but I think as a caution or precaution measure, you should evaluate whether or not those issues have potential impact on changing the way that the city regulates, the way that the city view, or even if there is a measure of considering whether or not for approval or disapproval. Those are the issues that you should be refraining from talking about.
Yeah, I think that the Executive Director Tai put that very nicely. And I mean, I think I would only add that, you know, for some criteria on, you know, that when you're evaluating whether something is, you know, potential business of the commission, you know, you might look at the municipal code section itself that outlines the powers and duties of HRC. That tells exactly what the HRC has purview and jurisdiction over, and really nicely, I think, sums up what is business of the commission or could be business of the commission.
Okay, well, I'm not making myself clear, I think. Can I add to this question a little bit? Can I?
Sure.
Let's say it's a property that's already listed. Does that automatically make it something that HRC commissioners can't discuss? Or, I mean, say it's a property that's already listed and we are worried about this property's demise and it not meeting the requirements for being listed any longer. I mean, but it's not on anybody's, but it's still a city business because things might be going down.
Well,
So
in my view,
we-
that would be a potential item of commission business, yes.
Right.
All right, thank
But
you.
it doesn't prevent you from individually talking to council members.
No, right. Hmm.
Okay, thank you.
I also have a question about that. So, because I sorry, my phone died, so I dropped out for about 5 minutes there. I might have missed it. So, if it's like 3 or under, so well under 5, and it's not going to be 4 people or under, but it is in our capacity as residents or in our capacity as neighborhood leaders. Like when I speak about this topic, I don't self-identify as a commissioner, because I'm representing myself as a resident and as a neighborhood leader, and I'm speaking with other.
Oh, you're unmute.
Oh my God, that's horrible. I said all that stuff and I was on mute. So I just wanted to say that I had this additional question. I had dropped out of the conversation for like 5 minutes because my phone died. But I had this additional question about discussing issues if we're 3 commissioners or less. So very healthily under the 4 commissioner thing. But it's a topic that maybe some of us were, I was involved before I was historical resources commissioner, as in my capacity as a neighborhood leader. And sometimes it is about, just wanting to safeguard that some processes are being followed. And this is after almost a decade of, at least for in this situation, of myself as a neighborhood resident and as a neighborhood leader before I was a commissioner, almost a decade of writing to city staff and trying to communicate with staff mainly about this issue, and having a really hard time, in addition to other people that were also residents, also not commissioners, also writing to these same city staffers and just not getting any kind of real constructive reaction, for whatever reason, not being given an explanation why certain things were not being explained, why certain processes were not being followed. I mean, there's an actual mothballing process that I believe at the state or the federal level that's completely being disregarded in this case. And so people that have an expertise in historical preservation, people that have an expertise in, the knowledge of the importance of this for our city are, obviously going to be the ones that can best inform this process. So it's just an interesting quagmire. But I have a question: Is it illegal for a commissioner to communicate on their own with the city council, but also just confer with other under not four commissioners, but maybe 3 commissioners or under that also are working in the capacity as neighborhood leaders that also have, like an investment in protecting a property that there's supposed to be guidelines to protect, but for some reason that is baffling to us, it's so much is just not being so much process is not being followed. So how can we advocate and, but still be legal about that?
Well, I think the short answer to your question, Commissioner, is that no, it is not illegal to communicate with your council member or with a certain smaller member of your colleagues on the commission. About the latter, I think I would only add that if it is a subject matter of such concern to at least a few members of the commission, it may be a subject matter of concern to the entire commission. And I would just suggest that it be considered to bring that matter before the entire commission for a more fuller discussion where all can participate.
I would agree, and for the, for no other reason other than that, should any certain position that you express while not in the public setting can be viewed as having a prejudicial view towards a project, an application, or otherwise, you could be asked to remove yourself from having to be participating in the decision-making process. So while I understand that we all have our own perspective and own views, but you also have a responsibility as a commissioner to have a fair and impartial review of each topic when it's presented to you and at the time when it's presented to you, and use your own personal experience and expertise to make a judgment on that, right? So there is that job that you have, that duty that you have as an HRC member, but that doesn't prevent you from being a person and expressing personal views. Just when you do that, please remember that you should do it as identify yourself as a private citizen's perspective. When you do talk among other members of the commission, again, there is nothing illegal to talk between yourselves when it's less than the majority, but the optics of that can sometimes be misconstrued. And through those optics, you could potentially be asked to remove yourself from making certain decisions when the time comes. So that's all we're saying. We're not telling you no, but there is a fine line that you have to judge for yourself, because you do have that responsibility of reviewing each application, each issue on its own at the time it's present before you for a decision.
Yeah, I certainly agree wholeheartedly with Executive Director Tai. That was a really articulately put. Example comes to mind. I had been in court recently before a certain judicial officer who in the past has made some comments about parties that were not party to the action that I was appearing in front of him. Those parties about whom he had made comments, however, did come before him later on a separate matter. And they actually sought to recuse him on the basis that they did not believe he could be neutral and unbiased based on the comments he had made about them in a separate unrelated proceeding. So I don't share that with you for the wrong reason, but I guess, perhaps to illustrate, what Executive Director Tai said, that you do want to, to illustrate the importance of being unbiased and fair. Certainly no one is asking you to check your passion, your opinions, your advocacy at the door. That is not what anybody is asking or expecting, for that matter, in your roles in advocates of these areas. But at the same time, it is important to be mindful of what the Brown Act allows and doesn't allow, and even irrespective of that, what some of these actions can lead to in terms of the appearance of bias. So.
Well, thank you all. I mean, this has been, you thought you were just going to do a dry presentation.
This, I think, has been the most, maybe the most robust part of the presentation. So thank you all for your questions. I hope, together, Executive Director Tai and I have gotten to the nub of them. But if there's any questions that remain, certainly we're available, to take those, on a going forward basis. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
All right. And I guess that brings us to the close of this. But thank you. Thanks for your time and attention. I know it's been a bit of a lengthier meeting, but thanks again.
Thank you so much. I'm going to my, okay. Now we're going to move into staff comments, okay?
Thank you,
and
Chair
on
Christie.
this, before Executive Tai.
Thank you, Chair Christie.
Well, hold on 1 second. Executive Tai, he's going to present a follow-up to an issue that we've all been emotionally involved in. And what I'd like to say to the commissioners, number one, okay, we're very passionate about historic properties. We all know that. Yeah. But once again, Executive Tai was not executive director or even hired by the city during the time this egregious act to this property happened. So with that, I just want you to be civil in your comments, and after he gives the report, you will be able to ask him questions and discussion. But once again, I want to remind you that when he did find out what had happened to this property, he took the appropriate action immediately. So I just want to let you know that he is there, responsible and quick acting in order to stop things that are being violation to the agreements that were agendized. So with that, Executive Ty, you're on.
Thank you, Chair Christie, and good evening, Commissioner. Staff will be reporting on 3 items of interest for you tonight. I'll be reporting on 2 of them, and Ali will provide information on the last item. The first item I want to report back to the Commission, as there has been questions in the past, as well as continuing interest at the Smith and Tuthill Funeral Parlor located at 518 North Broadway. Many of you may know that as the Dr. Julius Crane's house, or the former Citibank building located at 518 North Broadway. This particular resource is identified as historical listing number 145 of the City of Santa Ana landmark designation, and it was registered in 1978. The house was formerly built by Dr. Julius Crane, and back in 1885 has continued to survive in great condition to date. Since 2019, the property has been under remodel for the exterior to convert the building from a former bank building into an eating establishment. We have active permits on the property. We have active construction activity on the properties, and we have active inspection by the city on the property for work that was done. In addition to that, code enforcement has also been continuously monitoring the property, working with the property owner to ensure that there are adequate security and fencing of the property, and continue to monitor it for construction activities. We have recent inspection on construction activity as recent as April of this year. So this is ongoing. Due to COVID and COVID-related financial issues, the construction work, certainly the opening of the food establishment has continued to be delayed, but the work on the building to move towards to that end have not. So I want to report back that the condition of the site is certainly in progress, with the current condition being is that they are still remodeling on the interior, and inspection is still being done, and the property is secure. That concludes my report on that item. I do have our code enforcement manager, Alvaro Nunez, here to answer any questions you may have regarding that item tonight.
Do we have any commissioners with questions to Executive Ty or our wonderful code enforcement officer, Alvaro Nunez?
Great.
Nope.
This is regarding the Dr. Julius Crane house?
Correct.
Well, I guess if I may, Chair Christie, ask a question. This fellow who's purchased the Dr. Julius Crane house, in your opinion, does it appear that he is going to follow through in making a eating establishment out of this beautiful home? You know, this home, of course, started out as the doctor's home and office, and then it suffered the indignity of becoming a mortuary. I don't think that was any verdict on his practice as a doctor, but it became a mortuary, the Smith Tuthill Mortuary. And after they moved, it sat vacant and was going to be torn down. And Adeline Walker rescued the building and rallied the community to save it. And it then became home to Santa Ana Federal Savings and Loan, which was subsequently acquired by CalFed, then GlenFed, then Citibank and so forth. And of course, then they closed up some years ago and it sat vacant. And now its fate is to become some sort of a faux or pho eatery, I guess. And
Mr. Rush, Vice Chair Rush, all indications that we have the answer to you is yes, they are pursuing and completing their permits that they have obtained with the city.
I see. All right. Well, make sure that they don't destroy any of the facade. I'm really concerned about it. Every time I drive by, there's another window busted out of the place. Anyway.
I think our code enforcement manager, Alvaro, knows the security and people on site quite well. We have been, that's one of the property and you know, has been identified as a valuable resource, and it's in our downtown and very close to City Hall. So we have a close eye on it. Alvaro, do you want to say anything?
Yes, we're in communication with a business owner, with a tenant quite a bit. So we are being very observant of this property. And you're right, the fact that it's close to us, it makes it 100 times easier. It would be a shame if we let this one drop through the cracks, let's put it that way. And as far as the first question, Tim, I think the last inspection was literally, and I think by the building safety department, was done in late April. So they're still making corrections. They're working diligently. And let's be honest, to be frank, I think the owner was a little hesitant. I think with the vacancy in the OCTA building, I think that's going to help quite a bit, because he was having quite a bit of problems with some of the neighboring transit concerns. So this should help.
Alvaro, please don't be Frank. Be Alvaro.
Thank you, Alvaro.
Yeah.
If there's no other question, I will move on to the second topic I wanted to share and report back tonight. On April 14th, we received a rather urgent message from the council member and members of the community regarding potential desecration of a historical resources designated property in our city located at the 1854 Santa Clara, or the former Sex-Slinger farmhouse. For the new commissioner, this farmhouse was designated as I believe it's a key resource in 2012, at a time when the city was considering a new development on what was the former Orange Grove, one of the last Orange Grove, I believe, in the Orange County. The Sex-Slinger family lived in the house and built in the house, I think, in 1919. And the family lived there up until 2006. After the death of the family member, the house was donated to Concordia University, who then subsequently sold to a development company in 2007 for consideration of development. So ever since 2007, I believe, and Commissioner Rush, if you let me know if I'm wrong, but the house has been vacant. The property went through a series of consideration for development, went through litigation. There were a significant number of members of the community coming out in support of making sure that the farmhouse is preserved, both in terms of its physical form as well as being recognized and as a historical resource. So therefore, as I mentioned, the designation was made as a key resource in 2012. So therefore, the house, as part of the development project, must be preserved and must be rehabilitated. The project development was 23 single-family homes. That development was completed in early 2020. As part of the development approval, the farmhouse was to be preserved and restored, rehabilitated, so that it could be in habitable condition and continually be maintained as a key historical resource. In addition to that, there was a requirement that Orange about 16 orange trees to be planted and be preserved on the property to continue its heritage and tradition as an orange grove. As I indicated earlier, that on April 14th, we did receive an urgent message from the community that there was work on the house and potentially creating some irreversible damage. We dispatched our code enforcement division staff out to the property, discovered there were some unpermitted work being completed. Luckily, it was being completed on the interior. We issue a stop work notice, issue a citation, and also directed the property owner to come in, obtain permit from the city, obtain approval for the rehabilitation of the property as required by the development project. He had 14 days to comply. The 14 days obviously has passed. However, the owner has come in during that period and has requested to work with our code enforcement division and our planning division to allow a 90-day compliance period for them to complete the interior work, as well as working with our staff to rehabilitate the exterior of the building. So the owner has come in and is seeking compliance with our code enforcement and planning staff at this point in time. We are encouraged and optimistic that the owner will take responsibility to rehabilitate the house to its original condition as required under the approval. But if the work is not done or he deviates from that commitment, our code enforcement manager sitting here tonight has been provided very direct directions to ensure that we follow this process to the T and that the owner must comply per the requirements, and we are monitoring that property. So we're, as I mentioned, optimistic that the owner is going to commit to the rehabilitation and the schedule that he proposed to the staff, so it would allow him time to both finish the interior work as well as gathering the resources to initiate and complete the exterior preservation. Other issues on the property, including property maintenance and the planting of the orange trees, will also need to be completed. And we are monitoring the process. So I want to report back and share with the commission what transpired, some of the history for the new commission here, and also what action we have taken, as well as what steps are being taken by both the owner and the city to ensure that the work is done per the approval to restore the building and rehabilitate the exterior.
Are there any questions to Executive Director Tai? Vice Chair Rush?
I know this is, of course, very much after the fact, and we can't fix this now, but I never did understand why it was not part of the development agreement that the house would not be moved into the center of that subdivision of the property so that it could be made into a usable, viable, community room, study center, miniature library, whatever you want to call it, because now it's stuck out on one corner and you access it via a relatively busy street, not super busy, but if I had small children, I certainly wouldn't send them there on their own unless they were older. It's just unfortunate. To ask a dumb question, is there any chance that that could be relocated to some open space in the center of that subdivision where it could be really a part of the asset of that neighborhood?
I think that's a great question to ask, and I did drive through the new subdivision. Unfortunately, neither you or I or the current staff was involved in that process. The answer is it's going to be very challenging since there is not a lot of open space that would be large enough to accommodate the siting of this house, so that it could be appropriately preserved, view, or be functional. There is not a large enough lot, especially now that the subdivision and all the construction is completed.
Well, okay, notwithstanding that, is it possible, and I realize this would take a lot of machinations to do, but it might be worthwhile to step back and, because the property is, I believe, adjacent to Portola Park, is it not?
It is, and it is to the west of Portola Park, but understand that this is now in the hands of private ownership. It is a private property. The role of the city here is to make sure that it is continued to be preserved and maintained as a historical resource, as our listing has identified. But other than that, regulatory provisions and the city's role as a regulatory agency, it is still a private property and it's under private property ownership. In order for us to do anything of that magnitude, it would have to be under some type of public ownership.
Yeah. Well, this ought to be a subject of a study session for you and your planners of how not to do a subdivision. This is going to be a barnacle on that neighborhood and with the city for time immemorial. And I hope nothing bad happens to that property, but given that it doesn't really have, it's out there stuck out on its own like a sore thumb, it'll be a miracle if it survives a decade or two. I hope it does, but, and of course, this is, of course, also a great example of why the developer, it should have been in the agreement that he would never have been granted his last, pick a number, 5 or 6 certificates of occupancy until that property would have been maintained the way, or rehabilitated the way we want it to be done today. I hate to pick open a scab, but this is really a very, very unfortunate circumstance and a tremendous oversight. Whoever the planner was on this needs to have a holiday, unpaid.
Well, thank you for your comment and your perspective, and I do agree that this is a black eye for us on the process, but we all continue to make sure that we take note and the lessons learned here. We have internally discussed how, in terms of moving forward, not only addressing this situation, but also ensuring that we put into place provision that would address this from happening in the future. So thank you for your comment, and your input is noted.
Min?
Commissioner, is it McMillan?
No, it's
Mark,
McLaughlin.
is that you?
Yeah, it's me.
Okay, I can barely hear you, if that's fine.
Okay, so the one thing that I remember about this whole thing, because it took 10 or plus years to get through all the legalities of everything. But I seem to also remember that this was not just an outside meeting the standards, the national standards outside, it was also interior. Because there was some discussion about that as to try to keep both the exterior and interior intact.
The condition that I see in the ordinance, and again, since I wasn't there, the condition says that the exterior of the Sexlinger farmhouse and garage shall be rehabilitated in compliance with the Secretary of Interior standard for the treatment of historical property. So again, it's the exterior specifically. And that's the condition that was approved in the resolution documenting what was to be preserved.
Well, and the other discussion is that whoever it was ultimately going to be the developer of that property, it was their responsibility to take care of that. That was the action that came out of that.
I would agree with that, but I would also say that ultimately the owner of the property, who is still the responsible party, since the developer is no longer a part of this process. So I would agree that we should have addressed this at the time when the construction of the new development project took place, but that doesn't stop us from taking action today, even though the development project is done. So that's the reason why we are very actively and aggressively pursuing with the current owner. And that is something that we do have, luckily, in the process that holds the property owner, whether in the past, current, or future, to be responsible.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions on this item? Okay. Executive Director Talley.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. And at this point, I'd like to have Ali provide you with an update regarding a development project at the First American Title site in downtown.
Thank you, Min, and thank you, Chair Christie. I'd like to take a moment to provide an update on the First American site in downtown Santa Ana. This site is being developed by the Toll Brothers as the fourth and main community. Now it's been branded as the Rafferty mixed-use development. Just as a recap, the project was fully entitled in December 2019, including the partial facade preservation alternative. In March 2020, so about 4 months later, an effort began to peel back part of the 1970s facade that was added to the building. And that effort over a several-day period revealed the old facade of the old Orange County Title Company building intact underneath that 1970s facade. A handful of us were there. I remember it was raining a little bit, and we were all wowed when the facade was peeled back. Have some videos from that. That effort was supervised by two local historic preservation specialists. One of them was a preservation historian, and the other one was a preservation architect. And shortly after that effort, they drafted a report evaluating the feasibility of the preservation alternative. And that report was per the conditions of approval for the project, shared with members of the Planning Commission, the Historic Resources Commission at the time, as well as Preserve Orange County and the Santa Ana Preservation Society. Then in June of 2020, specifically June 11th, a virtual meeting was held in the midst of the pandemic to review the findings of that alternative and basically review what it had found, which said that the preservation alternative was in fact feasible. So during that meeting, took some minutes which were shared with the team. And we also committed as the city to sharing the shoring and demolition plans with the interested parties that are identified on the conditions of approval prior to any permit issuance. So after that meeting, then the summer, things with COVID started getting really bad, but the project nonetheless went into plan check, and albeit at a very slow pace. And those plans included shoring, demolition, and preservation, but they went into plan check. Project got very quiet. They finally did resubmit those plans in April. They're still in draft form, and they're still being reviewed by our senior plan check engineers to ensure that the integrity of the segment of the building and its facade that are to be preserved as part of the project are not compromised during any sort of site work or demolition of the rest of the building. It's a very complex task, and it requires a complex review. That's why it's taking time. It's not an over-the-counter demolition permit by any means like any other building. So those plans are still in draft format. As they near finalization, as we committed in the June 2020 meeting, those plans will be shared with the same parties that are identified on the conditions of approval. So that would be the Planning Commission, Historic Resources Commission, as well as the other preservation societies. And after that, we are to issue a letter determining the Planning and Building Agency's final position on the feasibility of that facade preservation alternative. And as indicated by the report, by the developer, and the historians and all that, that is an alternative that is feasible. And the plans that are in plan check, in fact, do call out the preservation of the facade segments that are identified on the conditions of approval. So that's the latest status. In a nutshell, it's still in plan check, and the shoring and demolition plans are still in review. And the next step will be to share those plans with the interested parties prior to any permit issuance. Be happy to answer any questions.
Ali, if at all possible at our next meeting, which would be in July, may I request that in your, you do the presentation with the actual slides that you took when the facade was revealed with the old, so that we have a picture of what they were doing. And because we had to fight in order to say, hey, there's something back there. There's an original structure behind that we want to protect. And when you said that you had pictures, could you please present that to us so that we could see what it was like and what was revealed behind it that we fought so hard to preserve?
I'd be more than happy to share those photos and any videos that I have at the July meeting.
Okay, and then you can keep us up with the steps on that building, because we all have a very vested interest in preserving that building. So thank you. Anyone else?
Absolutely.
Vice Chair Rush?
Ali, thank you, Chair Christie. Ali, did I understand you to say that this project has been rebranded the Rafferty Project?
Yes, the developer has chosen to call the project the Rafferty.
So does that mean Toll Brothers has backed out?
No, Toll Brothers is still the developer, but just like with many developments that get built, they brand them a certain community name, so they're calling the community the Rafferty.
I see. Okay. And when do you, I mean, I'm not pressuring you, I'm just asking, when would you expect that the demolition permit might be issued?
At the current pace of their plan check, I would expect that they'd be ready for permit issuance in the coming months, probably June or July. But just to make it absolutely clear, as committed before, we would share those plans with those interested parties prior to any permit issuance.
I see. Okay. All right. I have nothing further, Chair Christie.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Executive Director Ty, it's back to you.
Thank you, Chair. That concludes.
Thank you, Ali.
Thank you. Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Chair Christie. That concludes our staff's report tonight.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for your report. We really appreciate it. Okay, now it's moving on to commission comments. Commissioners, Vice Chair Rush, I'm going to go to what I see on the screen. Okay.
Alberta.
Mm-hmm. Commissioner McLaughlin.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
One thing you have to do is you have to reopen the consent calendar, and you have to vote on the absenteeism of the one member.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Then you close the consent, and then you move on to your statements.
Thank you so much. You know, I'm getting old.
We all are in one way or another.
Okay, going back to the consent calendar to the excused absence of Commissioner Frazier. Is that correct? Is that the only one? Madam Secretary? Hello?
Ali?
Oh, yes. That is correct.
Okay. I entertain a motion for the excused absence of Commissioner Frazier. Don't all speak at once.
Motion McLaughlin.
Okay, moved by Commissioner McLaughlin,
Second by Commissioner Marashi.
second by Commissioner Marashi. All those in, Madam Secretary.
Yes. Commissioner Carpenter,
Approve.
Commissioner Hardy,
Aye.
Commissioner Marashi,
Yes.
Commissioner Ship,
Yes.
Commissioner Peña Sarmiento,
Yes.
Commissioner McLaughlin,
Aye.
Vice Chair Rush,
Aye.
Chair Christie.
Aye.
Motion passes with Commissioner Frazier absent.
Very good. Now, moving on to commissioner comments. Okay, the first one I see on my screen is Commissioner Marashi.
I want to express my gratitude and thank you very much for the city staff for preparing all the fine presentations and delivering them. And also to John for an outstanding presentation today. Thank you very much. That was very informative. I also want to congratulate the homeowners. So congratulations to them. I also want to talk about something I learned at the this state historic commission meeting that just took place the other day. James R. Mills was born on June 6, 1927, and passed away on March 27, shortly after our last HRC meeting. Mr. Mills held positions in California State Assembly and Senate offices from 1960 to 1982, and was a champion for the historic preservation and public transportation. Senator Mills from San Diego was inspired to write a historic preservation law when a developer proposed demolishing the historic Hotel del Coronado. The law was deemed unconstitutional in 1973, but voters later approved it as a constitutional amendment in 1976. This is the Mills Act we all know and talk about in our meetings. In 1975, Senator Mills authored a bill that would lead to the creation of the San Diego Trolley, which was a model for other light rail projects. And who knows, maybe our own very own Santa Ana Trolley. He also served on the Amtrak Board of Directors starting in 1977 and as chairman from 1980 to 1982. Therefore, I would like to recommend that we adjourn this meeting in Mr. James Mills' honor. Thank you.
So noted. Okay, Commissioner Harding. You're muted. There.
Thank you. First of all, I want to talk about the building in the house in my background, the lovely Spanish electric house. How do you say that word? Spanish electric. It's located at 830 South Birch Street, and it was built in 1922, which makes it 98 years old now, and it's nominations for the 2020 Most Beautiful Yard in Hettinger Park. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Also, I have an item of concern. There is, for the first time, a neighborhood beautiful block contest. And one of the criteria, I believe, could be a concern for our commission. That criteria would be that in order for a block to qualify, their front doors need to be crisply painted.
I'm sorry, it need to be what?
Crisply painted, freshly painted.
Okay.
Now that's a concern that I expressed. Because many of our historic front doors are one of a kind, custom, and there is no paint on them. There might be finishes, and I don't want to be encouraging folks with historic front doors that have no idea these front doors should not be painted by making a criteria for a freshly painted door to qualify for a most beautiful block nomination or award. So I want that to be duly noted. I did already express my concern, and I was reassured that next year that criteria will be struck from the qualifications, but we do need to be aware of that.
Executive Director Ty, would you please follow up with neighborhood initiative and also the Comlink board that in their selection or for restating that as a criteria that with historic homes, they have to be very careful. All right.
Chair Christie, this was not actually, this is a program that is being put forth and a competition by the Public Works Department. So I will share the concern, and I believe Commissioner Hardy has already shared her concern with the Public Works Director, but I will relay the message as well.
Okay, and I think it's being selected by Comlink. It's going to their
no, I
board.
think it's by the ETAC.
ETAC, it's
Oh,
ETAC.
ETAC, okay.
ETAC is doing it.
Sorry. Okay, to make sure that they understand we strongly disapprove of, of their criteria, especially with historic homes, so.
I think what you should do is maybe send a letter off to Public Works and ETAC, because I know it was brought up in the last meeting that the ETAC had, which was this week, but it's not clear that everybody understands what's being talked about.
Right.
And since I live with the chair of the ETAC, I'll pass the message on.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Anything for you, dear, anything for you.
Wouldn't it be appropriate to say either crisply painted or the finish, if it's finished, the door be in good order? In other words, you don't want some door that's beat to death. If it's naturally done, great. If it's just got tongue oil on it or varnish, great. But it shouldn't look weathered and peeling paint, peeling varnish, peeling shellac, whatever, right?
Well, that's correct. That's correct. That's correct. But on there. Okay, Commissioner Hardy.
Thank you, everybody, for that discussion. I have another issue. Councilperson Penaloza was talking about that there are guidelines for historic neighborhoods as far as the small cell node antenna and equipment on existing pole installation. He failed to mention Hettinger Park neighborhood. I have been in correspondence with him. I have been responding to every notice that they have sent us. These different companies saying that, no, we don't want this, go away, but I guess we can't really do that. And so, Executive Director, if these guidelines do exist in a hard copy, I would like a copy of them if Hettinger Park neighborhood does qualify as having specific guidelines for the installation of these small cell nodes antennas by these companies.
What I would do is I will forward your concern regarding the neighborhood association for additional historic review for appropriateness when these sites are located to the Director of Public Works and have him contact you directly to talk to the association and coordinate the process.
Okay, thank you. If that's how it works. So there's nothing really in writing.
Not for the commission, because that is really outside of the commission's purview, because it is in the public right of way. But I think it's a very appropriate issue that the neighborhood association, especially since it does have a formal historical designation, that that be something that needs to be highlighted and discussed with that process. So I will definitely share with the Public Works Director to make contact with the association. And
Great.
yourself, and then as well as provide him with information about its historical designation in our code.
Thank you very much. Another concern I have is we have a brand new, there might be more, there's only one I'm aware of right now, a brand new traffic turnaround that is basically a bunch of plastic sticks and plastic bumps. You go over to French Park and they got some real beautiful traffic turnarounds, 3 in a row that I noticed. Now, why is it that historic Henninger Park neighborhood or historical Henninger Park neighborhood has these plastic bumps and sticks for a traffic turnaround right in front of actually this house that's in the background behind me? I had to very carefully not get those in the picture, those plastic sticks and bumps. So Executive Director Min, are there plans in the future to have something similar to what French Park has, or are we stuck with what we have?
You know, I asked the same question when I first got here, when I drove across those, you know, for lack of a better word, temporary design looking improvements. So I will raise the question again, and I will share that with our Public Works Department and make sure that they get back to you on any future plans or any planned improvements for those traffic safety or traffic calming measures.
Great. I appreciate that.
What Public Works has been doing from time to time is the ones that are with the stand-up, little plastic stand-ups, that's sometimes done because they want to see what kind of impact the roundabout has on the traffic mitigation, and they put that in as a temporary measure. And they've done that in a number, they did that over in Park Santiago by Hoover Elementary. And it was used to basically see what mitigation impact they had.
And how long do they have that up before they make a conclusion?
Actually, it lasted about 2 weeks because everybody in the neighborhood ran them down.
Yeah,
They didn't
well,
want them.
ours have been over 2 weeks and it's getting pretty battered.
Yeah.
So, all right, thank you. Moving on to another concern, 718 South Broadway, the Pomeroy House, which is on our Register of Historic Properties. In the year 2020, I was wanting to maybe nominate it for Historical Preservation Award when I was told that that it couldn't possibly be eligible even for consideration because there are outstanding code violations and outstanding building permits that have not been finalized and that inspectors haven't done on the building permit since 2018. I asked for some kind of an update on what the heck is going on, and I have heard nothing. So what we need is some sort of update on what's going on that property. I was by there last month and there were trucks full of drywall and building materials. They've been continuously working on it all this time and I have heard nothing. So, like I
Sounds
said,
like a job
it is
for Nunzio.
on our list. Yes,
That will be
please.
put on my list as well. And we will commit to getting information back.
Great. And I have one final concern, and that is that for all of our time, energy, and passion for historic preservation, personally, I feel that we've dropped the ball because we're not pursuing National Register putting properties on the National Register individually. Come to mind the YMCA that you know, we've done all the survey work, they're on our list, and then we just let them languish. And the other property that comes to mind is the one that there's a lot of concern about right now. And I think we've just sort of failed the historic preservation community and ourselves. And so what I'm asking is that we have like a workshop or something that explains to us how properties can be moved forward from our local register to like the state or the national and or federal, whatever it's called. And we need to know if we can do that individually, what the process is, the individual nomination, how the property owner's involved, if they need to agree. I would really like a workshop on that to let us know how we can move forward if there are any properties left. I know we did the Floral Park neighborhood, but I'm talking about individual properties and also Pacific Park East Side. I believe they need some work there, but first they got to get, they have to, you know, probably be local, but maybe you don't have to be a designated local. Maybe you can go right for national designation. I don't know. But anyway, that's my last comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Hardy. Commissioner Sarmiento Pena.
Thank you, Chair Christie.
You've been holding that umbrella all during this meeting. It's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. It
Are you
blocks the
outside?
sun. Yes, I am. I'm outside. I didn't want all the sun to mess up the camera. It can make you a silhouette. So thank you. It's a very colorful backdrop for today. So I just wanted to make a couple comments here. First, I did want to also just agree with Commissioner Hardy about the cell phone towers. So Director Min, if you could just please make a note, even for communities or neighborhoods that are not historic, like Pacific Park East Side, my neighborhood, we have a lot of historic buildings. We concentrated there, not as many as we'd like. We haven't had that historic designation yet because we're just barely starting to organize as a neighborhood association. But in the neighborhoods I have seen these cell towers, they're really unsightly and just they're really like the bottom of the bottom that I have ever seen anywhere in the nation. And they really, like, that kind of thickness and that kind of unsightly just bundle of conduit really lowers property values, and it really lowers just the charm and you know, the feel of a whole neighborhood. It destroys any sense of design. And in more affluent neighborhoods, a lot of times we see these cell towers, you know, they're shaped like trees, or they're much more, they just don't look so ugly. They don't stick out like a sore thumb, you know, and just degrade the visual landscape. So there really should be some kind of design standards citywide for these cell towers. You know, we're all dependent on technology, but that technology does not have to be installed so with such a lack of equity, you know, with the design standards. So really, the cell towers south of 17th should look just as beautiful as the cell towers north of 17th. So I just want to, you know, really emphasize that. Also, again, another equity issue, as Commissioner Hardy mentioned, the traffic turns, the little roundabouts. Again, it's an equity issue. Why do the roundabouts in the neighborhoods that tend to be, you know, like not as affluent look really bad? You know, they're really unsightly, and they tend to last for months, not weeks. You know, these like unsightly bumps and things, they're there for quite a while, and it doesn't seem to be a priority to really again, you know, employ design standards in some neighborhoods, whereas it is a priority in other neighborhoods. And that's a problem. That's something that needs to be addressed. Another thing is recovery funds and budget. Is it possible to get a budget presentation on our agenda so that we can see what resources are available for us as a commission, as in the press, in the endeavor of, you know, creating greater awareness of historic restoration of our place as a historic city in Orange County? We're one of the 2 most historic cities in the entire county. And is there the possibility of getting any recovery funds to do something to stimulate and come back from you know, this year that we've all suffered? Like, can we do something in partnership with the Bowers Museum to emphasize like the historic Californios that were here in Santa Ana, for example? Can we do some interesting plaque or cultural corridor projects, that again, call attention to certain communities here that have been disenfranchised? It could really benefit organizations like the Heritage Museum, the Lion Air Museum, the Bowers Museum, who were closed for over a year, and they would certainly benefit from maybe having, through the partnering with Historic Resources, having access to some of these recovery funds so that we can maybe stimulate our residents to maybe engage with our history at some of these great institutions that we already have with the city. So I'd like a budget presentation to see if that's possible to access some of these recovery funds for historical purposes. So, so that's one. Two, I wanted to follow up on the South Main historical markers in our previous meeting. Chair Christie directed Director Mintai to follow up with me about the 18 freestanding posts that we're supposed to have going into South Main, and start to talk and plan about how we're going to make them successful historical markers. How we're going to, maybe create a budget allocation or organize to get those historical toppers, put on. I wanted to talk more about the, like Angel Walk LA, and how we could do something similar with these historical markers in our city. We have a great responsibility and a great opportunity to tell our story here on South Main. There's a lot of history that's happened there and in other parts of our city, like the OC streetcar route in the future is another opportunity to tell the story of our city through historical markers and public art. So I want to follow up on the South Main historical markers. And I know you've been really busy, Director Tai, so maybe we can get together and discuss this further before our next historic resources meeting. And then three, as we're talking about being a very historic city, I did want to touch upon just real briefly the building in my neighborhood that I've been doing a lot of advocacy on, and at least for 8 years. And I know people have been doing advocacy before that also. And that is the Cypress Fire Station right on Cypress and Bishop in Pacific Park East Side neighborhood in Santa Ana. This is I wanted to just really quickly just respond to Commissioner Rush about your letter about how the neighborhood had just forgotten about that building, and maybe we didn't know about it, or it just fell through the cracks. I just really want to emphasize we have not forgotten about that building, and we have been very actively advocating for that building for, as I said, myself, almost a decade, collectively as a community, certainly for at least a decade. We have not forgotten about that building. I turned over to City Council 30 pages of correspondence that all of us surrounding neighborhoods and Pacific Park people have been, emailing staff, and, 30 pages. And that was a partial list. We have over 50 pages of correspondence of us trying to organize around that property. We were working with prior city manager Moet. He was also Parks and Rec director. We were working with Moet prior as a community to bring back that property into public service. We're organizing dinners, created a website for that property. So we were going, doing something with that property. And unfortunately, when Moet left the city, that's when suddenly all of the doors shut. And no matter how many letters we wrote staff, how much advocacy we did, we were just shut out. And at that time, I was not a historic resources commissioner, so I was not aware, and no one in our neighborhood was aware of what resources were available, what processes should have been followed. This is not a question of opinion. It is not opinion. It is process that is already on the books, guiding the mothballing and preservation and restoration of our publicly owned properties. They exist. We are only trying to have those processes followed. That best practices that already exist. It's not an opinion that it should be followed. It's already there. The process is there. It's on the books. I'm not sure if it's at the state or federal level, this mothballing process that Commissioner Hardy had come across, but we didn't follow it for this property. We didn't listen to our community. We've been advocating for a decade. So Commissioner Rush, it's not because we dropped the ball. Something is broken.
Okay.
So I just wanted to mention that. So in the future, if we could put on the agenda some process for when a community identifies or has this concern about a historic property, if we can just really like make it very clear what the process is for advocating for a property and being heard. You know, is there some kind of a flow chart or a protocol that we need to formalize so that things like this don't happen in the future? Maybe so. So I just want to bring that up and maybe suggest that for the future. And then also, number 4, perhaps it is possible, since we already have a representative from community development and planning already on the as members of our body, perhaps we can consider adding a member from the Arts Commission onto our body, since hopefully in the future we'll be working, you know, history and design together to bring some public art that maybe has some kind of historical aspect to it, and maybe even encourage some collective resources and grant opportunities to commemorate the rich history that we have in this city. And that's those are all my comments. Thank you so much for listening.
Okay, thank you. Next, I see Vice Chair Rush. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Christie. I'll try to be brief because we are now into our 4th hour. Along that vein, I would like us to consider perhaps moving the start of our meetings to 3:30. So that's something I would encourage staff to take a look at, and maybe the commissioners to consider.
Is there some reason for 3:30?
Well, it's now 8 o'clock and our meeting is yet to be done. If we're lucky, we'll finish up at 8:30. I think that's a pretty lengthy meeting. It's just my opinion, but I think maybe moving the start time up from 4:30 to an earlier time is at least worth consideration. So
we had a full agenda and then we had a work study session.
I know we did.
Training, that's what happened as far as the extension of the time. So
I understand that, but if you look at start and end time of quite a number of our meetings, they are often going 3+ hours. So I'm just suggesting it's something that I think is worthy of discussion. With regard to Commissioner Hardy's comment about the Pomeroy House, I wish to echo that as well. She and I have been hounding staff on that property. I remember looking at it when it was a repossession, and I think that was about 4.5 years ago. The guy that owns it now bought it. We thought, oh joy, it's going to be refurbished, and it has gone through a transformation. But what a mess! I mean, it wouldn't take anybody who had any reasonable skill set with a contractor this long to refurbish that property. And it's gone on and on and on. And we need to really get tough with that property owner and say, look, enough's enough here. You need to get this thing done. It's a mess. I mean, that property is such a lovely, it originally was when it was built almost 100 years ago, a beautiful property. And it's just been turned into a rabbit warren. It's really too bad. The other thing I wanted to mention was with regard to the comment that was made about the antennas. Yes, it may be in the public right-of-way, Min, but you won't see those kind of antenna installations in Irvine Why? Because the city wouldn't allow it. That's why. So we need to have an eye towards our aesthetics here. And Mark, you're chair of the Planning Commission. I would hope that the Planning Commission would take a hard eye and a hard view towards these telecommunications companies that want to destroy the look and appearance of our neighborhoods with putting up these. I mean, these things rival the kind of goofy wiring installations that we see all over India. We've all seen those pictures of, you know, a telephone pole that's got 10,000 wires attached to it. And you think, how in the world could that possibly work? And we're not Mumbai. We're the county seat. We're the Golden City. And we need to say no to that kind of crap in our neighborhoods and just say, you got to come up with something better. So whether it's East Side, Pacific Park, Floral Park, Wilshire Square, Washington Square, whatever, none of us deserve that kind of crap in our neighborhoods. And I don't care if they say this is what's available. Really? Well, we'll take what you're putting into Irvine. That's what we'll take. Because I guarantee you it doesn't look like that. So we just need to have better standards. Mark, is this on your agenda for planning? Is Mark on?
I am here. Let me respond to that. It is outside of the purview of the Planning Commission because it is located in the public right of way.
Well, whose purview is it?
It is part of ETAC, I believe, and Public Works process, as well as ultimately the City Council.
I just wanted to make a quick comment. You know, at the last city council meeting, they received and filed the new guidelines for wireless facilities in the public right of way. So if you want to see what the current regulations, the brand new regulations are, go check out the last city council meeting agenda.
All right, I'll do that. By the way, it came up tonight, a number of properties, and of course, quite a number have already reached their 100-year anniversary. I wonder if it might be worthwhile, I think it's certainly within our purview as a historical commission to have staff design a plaque, which we would not provide, but make available for purchase with a design guideline that we would offer up for properties that are 100 years old. And I think that would be a neat thing. Many owners, I think, would take advantage of it. It would allow them to show pride in their property and showcase these homes that are 100 years old. And I would like to offer that as a suggestion, Madam Chair, for us to either direct staff or encourage them to come back to us with some.
We'll direct staff because we have been talking about a plaque for several years now in design. So we will direct staff to report back in not July, but our next meeting after July. It's on the staff as far as a possible design and price. Executive Director Ty,
if I may, I'm working with staff on evaluating and reviewing a plaque program. So we will bring something back to the commission for, at the minimum, discussion on how the recommendation as to standardize, as well as how such a program could be funded. So that will be brought back in the short future. I would say that, either July, after the July meeting, we hope to have some information.
Okay.
Okay, great. That's wonderful news. Last comment I have is there's a wonderful book that came out, was published the 20th of April of this year, written by Ken Bernstein, who some of you know, who was a longtime staff director of advocacy for LA Conservancy, and he's for some years has been the chief historical planner for the city of LA. And he wrote a book, LA Historic Places. It's number 10 on the bestseller list, if you can believe that. Kind of remarkable. I can't remember the last time that a book on preservation ever hit the bestseller list, but I ordered a copy on Sunday when I saw it listed in the paper. But anyway, that's all my comments, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'm going right down to the bottom is Commissioner McLaughlin. You please unmute. Please unmute.
For the sake of this evening, I have nothing to report out at this point in time. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
And finally, Commissioner Carpenter, I see you up in the corner. You keep moving.
Yeah, I'm going to be very succinct, and I would encourage others to do the same. I've got to go because if I don't go, I'm not going to get anything to eat. So thank you very much and goodbye.
Okay, very good. And very brief on the, before we close, is that, you know, that $143 million that this city is getting, they want input on how to use those funds. Commissioner, you had some good suggestions. Please fill out that questionnaire and put your suggestions as far as funds for historic resource, plaques, or whatever, okay? And with that, I'd like to move with the motion.
Chair, if I could just add real quick, I think a lot of the follow-up items are really informational, but in terms of the request for a budget review, that is something that we don't have control over. It is a city council function, and it is also outside of the purview of the HRC. So I just want to make sure that I address that, so that way there's not an expectation for us to come back with that information. In terms of the Main Street program, I will forward the request to the Public Works Director, as he is also working on that program as well. And that is something that he can work with Commissioner Pochapena outside of the realm of the HRC as a neighborhood beautification project and issue. So I will take that forward to the Public Works Director. On the Cypress Fire Station, I would highly encourage that for all commissioner who has a perspective on that, please talk to your council member. It is a city property, but it also is, it is a designated historical landmark. And therefore, you know, it still has to follow the historical landmark for rehabilitation process. And that is as far as the purview of the commission. And certainly you can express your personal opinion on preservation and aspect of that, but I would highly encourage that you do that directly with the council member that appointed you or the city council. So I would highly encourage that. The cell tower on private property, the city does have guidelines to address design of cell towers. Often we use design, cloning, and design to help hide the antennas, such as turning it into trees, turning it into other designs so that the naked pole is and the equipment is not viewable. The concern that you are talking about, which is the small cell that are located in the public right of way, that is also outside the realm of the Plan Commission, as mentioned. So please, I will forward your concern to the Public Works Director and have them, provide you with information directly, Commissioner Pochapena. So I just want to respond to those aspects of what is really, it's outside of the function of the commission and the purview. And it kind of goes back to this morning, this previous presentation by John, is that we want to make sure that our discussion stay within the framework of the Historical Resources Commission purview, and things that your staff, I can actually have take action on. Otherwise, all I can do really is try to connect you with the right person in the city who deals with those issues and help you to get some of your perspective across, and hopefully that will help to get information to the right folks. So thank you.
Okay, very good. And I just like to thank staff for all your hard work and all the commissioners for your engagement. It's nice to have a city attorney tell us we're very engaged and we're doing our job, which is very good. Thank you so much for that. And with that, I'd like to adjourn the meeting in former State Senator James R. Mills, and that our next regular scheduled meeting of the Historic Resource Commission is scheduled for Thursday, July 1st, 2021 at 4:30. Is there a motion to that? Come on, guys.
I move that we adjourn, Commissioner Marashi.
Okay,
I'll
Commissioner
second-
Roth.
I'll second the motion.
Second by Commissioner Harlan. Madam Chair, Secretary, I'm sorry. I think we still have a quorum, right? Hello, Sarah? Did she leave?
No, I'm here. Yes, we do still have a quorum.
Okay.
Commissioner Carpenter left. Commissioner Hardy?
Yes, Sarah, I'm here.
Thank you. Commissioner Marashi?
Yes.
Commissioner Shipp? He left the meeting. Commissioner Pena Sarmiento?
Yes.
Commissioner McLaughlin?
Aye.
Vice Chair Rush?
Yes.
Chair Christie? Yes, and with that, I adjourn the meeting at 8:16 p.m. Good night, everybody. Thank
Good
you
night,
so
everybody.
much. Bye.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.